Level 1 to 100. Time travel that breaks everything. To fall asleep. 2. What if the clock isn't just measuring time, but lying to you? Somewhere between your first breath and this very moment, you followed time like a river, believing it only flows one way. But tonight, we ask something far stranger. What if time is folding back on itself while you sleep? What if your dreams are echoes from futures that never happened, or memories from lives you never lived? This isn't just a bedtime story. It's an invitation to unravel the illusion, because time isn't a line, it's a labyrinth, and in that labyrinth everything breaks. Logic, causality, even you. So close your eyes, not to escape, but to travel. Let go of needing to understand. Let the mystery do the work. You're not here to solve time. You're here to feel it dissolve. Welcome to the journey. Let's begin at level 1 and descend. The door that shouldn't open. It doesn't begin with a machine. It begins with a sound, barely a sound at all. A soft click, like a door that you were certain was locked, but somehow it opens anyway. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to make you stop. That's the strange thing about time. We treat it like a hallway, one way only. But what if it's not a line? What if it's a house with too many doors, and one of them, tonight, has quietly swung open behind you? You weren't expecting to turn around, but something about that open door draws you, not fearfully, not even with urgency, just a quiet curiosity that hums at the edges of your thoughts. You take a step, not forward, but inward, and the world doesn't change. You do. Two strangers sit on a bench at a nearly empty train station. One has been waiting long enough to memorize the pattern of cracks in the pavement. The other sits down, a little breathless from chasing the last train that's already gone. You ever get the feeling, the second one says, that you were supposed to miss something? The first smiles faintly, still staring ahead. Or maybe you didn't miss it. Maybe it's still waiting for you, just somewhere else. We're taught to think of time as a countdown. But what if it loops? What if it lingers? Maybe what we call the past is just the present wearing different clothes. And the future? Maybe it's a scent you noticed before you ever walked into the room. This is how all stories of time travel begin. Not with blinking lights or Einstein's equations, but with a forbidden thought. The moment you entertain it, the rules begin to shift, and something in your chest stirs, not in panic, but in recognition. You've been here before, haven't you? Not in this exact moment, but in that feeling, the quiet knowing that something you thought was over never really left. You walk into your kitchen and pause mid-step. Something about the air feels wrong, not dangerous, just rearranged. You look at the mug on the counter. Did you leave it there? Or was it always waiting? Time isn't always linear. It breathes, folds, remembers, like a letter you meant to send but kept in a drawer, like a voice you only hear when everything else is silent. Maybe memory is just time walking backward with bare feet. Maybe déjà vu is the past brushing your shoulder as it leaves the room again. And in that space between wondering and accepting, you hear something deeper than logic. Not a sound, a permission. You don't need to understand this door. You only need to notice it. The future may have already happened. The past may still be sitting in your favorite chair, but none of that is pressure. It's possibility. So step quietly now. The floorboards will remember your footsteps. The first ripple has already begun. And you're not late. You're right on time. The paradox of the grandfather. What if the moment you finally figured out how to fix the past, you vanished? This is the haunting whisper at the heart of the grandfather paradox. Imagine it's midnight. The hum of an old clock pulses softly in the background. Your eyes are closed, but your mind is wide awake, pacing back through memory, curiosity, regret. You ask yourself, what if you could go back? Not just to observe, but to change something critical, something foundational. Maybe you go back to stop a war, to save a loved one, or, more personally, to prevent the meeting that led to your own existence. That's where it unravels. Because here lies the twist. If you went back in time and stopped your grandfather from ever meeting your grandmother, what happens to you? The paradox feels simple at first. You erase the moment of your origin, which means you were never born. But if you were never born, you could not have gone back to stop anything. And if you didn't go back, then the meeting happens. You're born, and so you do go back. The loop begins again, a knot tied from cause and effect, pulling tighter every time you try to untangle it. I don't get it, someone says beside you, their voice sleepy. Why would anyone want to erase themselves? You shrug in the dark. Maybe not to erase, maybe just to understand, or undo something that hurts. But wouldn't that change everything else too? You pause. You both know the answer. Yes. That's the danger and the temptation. The past is not a locked box. It's a mirror. Touch it, and the reflection ripples. But in this paradox, even the mirror breaks. Because if time follows logic, the act of undoing the past cancels the future, including the self that acted. A self-erasing decision. It's not just science fiction. It's a philosophical fault line that shakes the foundation of how we understand time, identity, and causality. What does it mean that your present self could destroy the condition of your own creation? And what does it say about the fragility of existence that a single change could blink you out like a dream forgotten on waking? Perhaps the paradox isn't just about time. Perhaps it's about our obsession with control, our desire to fix what hurt us, even if it means risking everything. Perhaps the grandfather paradox is a cautionary tale whispered by the universe. Be careful what you wish to unmake. Because you are not just the product of good choices. You are also the echo of accidents, pain, and unexpected love. Still awake? The voice asks again. You smile faintly. Yeah, just thinking about time travel. They chuckle. Then I'll let you be. Wake me up if you figure out how to bring coffee back from yesterday. You both laugh softly. The kind of laugh that fades into quiet. And in that quiet, a final thought surfaces. Maybe time isn't a line. Maybe it isn't a loop. Maybe it's something stranger, like breath, like memory, like the dream of a dreamer who's forgotten their dreaming. Close your eyes. We're about to peel back another layer. The loop that can't break. Some stories don't begin, they arrive, like a melody with no composer, just playing. You're sitting quietly tonight, maybe with your head against the pillow or your back curved against the weight of today. And suddenly there's a thought, not loud, not urgent, but stubborn, circling like a quiet bird over still water. You can't say when it landed. You're not even sure it flew in. It feels like it was always there. They call this a causal loop. A moment in time that wraps around itself like a thread pulling its own beginning. A traveler goes back and gives a poet the pages he's already read. The poet writes them. History credits him. But who first whispered the words? Who planted the seed? You'd think stories need origins, but some just repeat. not like echoes of sound, but of meaning. A whisper that carries its own birth. No author, just continuation, just persistence. Wasn't that line from something? Someone asks in a memory you're not sure is yours. You nod. Yeah, but I don't remember where I heard it. I think I've always known it. And there it is again. The loop. A thought that thinks itself into being. A truth with no parent. There's something strangely comforting about that. Like a lighthouse that lights itself. Like your body remembering how to breathe even when you've forgotten to care. Some things don't need a first cause to feel real. They just need your presence to complete the circle. And maybe you've lived a few of these loops too. A conversation you swore you hadn't had until it finished, and you realized you knew how it would end. A decision that felt rehearsed, even though it was new. A dream that didn't belong to any night in particular, just floating, familiar. A man once asked a woman, "Didn't we meet here before?" She smiled and said, "Only if we're supposed to again." He never found out if she was joking or if she remembered something he didn't. Maybe it didn't matter. You don't need to explain these things tonight. You're not here to solve. You're here to soften, to breathe into the loop. It's not a trap. It's a spiral staircase. And if you're gentle, each step repeats, but leads somewhere quieter. Let the circle turn. Let the story echo. You're not lost. You're just arriving. Over and over again. Close your eyes and let your thoughts fold in on themselves like hands at rest. There's no beginning, no end, only you. Still here, still listening. Let the loop hold you and follow the echo. Deeper. The universe that fixes itself. What if the universe is not broken when it contradicts you, only complete in a way you don't yet understand? That's the quiet power behind the Novikov self-consistency principle. It whispers a strange but comforting paradox. You can travel back in time, but you can't change it. Not because some invisible force stops you, not because you are too weak, but because time already absorbed you into its story. Everything you do has always been part of what was, like a river flowing backward, yet never spilling out of its banks. A boy once stood at the edge of a frozen lake, watching his sister fall through the ice. Years later, he built a machine, a whispering sphere of gears and light, and traveled back to that moment. He reached for her, screaming her name, thinking this time he would save her. But his foot slipped. His panic startled her. She turned, just a second too soon, and the ice gave way. And in that loop, he realized the past didn't reject his rescue. It included it. "I thought I could fix it," he said. "And you did," came the reply. "Just not the way you expected." It's a cruel kind of elegance, isn't it? You think you are the author of change, only to discover you're a sentence that was always there, highlighted in Time's manuscript. The Novikov principle doesn't rob you of agency. It reframes it. You are not rewriting the book. You are reading a chapter in which your every attempt to change fate becomes its mechanism. The cause becomes the effect. The rescuer becomes the reason rescue was ever needed. It's unsettling, like looking into a mirror that shows not your reflection, but the back of your head. But maybe there is a strange kind of freedom here. If time loops to preserve itself, then maybe you can let go of the guilt. The moment was not your fault. It was always you, always there, always folded into the tapestry. Do you ever wonder if trying to fix things is what breaks them? One voice asks in the dark. The other waits, breath steady. Sometimes, but I think not trying would break us more. And still, the universe doesn't punish. It adjusts. It folds the pain back into its own fabric with a whisper. This, too, belongs. Every effort, every loss, every loop. So take a breath. Let go of control. Time doesn't wait, but it doesn't rage either. It flows quietly around every intention. And maybe the beauty is this. You can walk into the past not to change it, but to finally understand why it had to be exactly what it was. And in that understanding, you rest. The butterfly that started a storm. It began so gently, the wings barely moved the air, but something shifted. Something always shifts. A choice so small it could be mistaken for nothing at all. A glance left instead of right. A footstep delayed by half a second, and somewhere, quietly, the world took a breath in a different rhythm. They were sitting together on a bus bench, two strangers not meant to speak. But the man turned and asked, "Do you know if this one goes to Riverway?" She didn't, but she smiled and answered anyway. That smile led to a conversation. The conversation to a delay. And while they lingered in the pause, the original bus passed, taking with it someone else's ending or beginning. That's the butterfly effect. Not storms at first, not roaring chaos, just a tilt in the invisible, just the brushing of wings against the edge of possibility. You drop your keys, you return home, you make a call you wouldn't have. And on the other side of the world, someone never boards a plane. You were never meant to control all of it. That's the ache, isn't it? That if only you had done one thing differently, the whole world might have bloomed brighter, or not collapsed. But that ache is also a story we tell ourselves to feel important, to believe we had that much power, and yet we do. Not in the way of gods, but like threads tugged by wind. A child coughs in a crowded room and shifts a decision. A woman takes a different street to avoid an ex-lover and sees a poster that changes her career. A man says yes to a coffee invitation out of loneliness and becomes a father by winter. "Do you ever think," he said, stirring sugar into tea, "that missing that job interview led you here?" She leaned her head on her palm. "I think about it all the time, but not with regret, more like awe." "Awe?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah, like, if everything is this fragile, and still it holds together, maybe there's a kind of wisdom inside the mess. Some nights, what keeps us awake is not the weight of what we did, but the weight of what might have been, the unopened doors, the unspoken words, the butterflies we didn't notice as they passed. But maybe it's not chaos. Maybe it's precision, braided too tight for our minds to follow. Maybe there is a music to it, even if we only hear the echo. A pattern drawn in motion so fast we can only feel the trace after it's gone. So tonight, let the past soften. Let the wings flap where they will. Because even the smallest kindness you offered today might one day keep someone alive. Even the breath you're taking now might ripple into comfort you'll never see. And that is enough. You don't need to map the storm. You are not its master. You are simply in it, part of it, fluttering in your own quiet way. Noun, whisper your next thought softly. It might shape the universe. The clock with no hands. What if time never ticked at all? What if the clicking of seconds was just an echo we invented? One we started listening to long after the rhythm was already alive inside us. Long before gears and hands and alarms, we knew when to wake by the light in the trees. We knew when to sleep by the hush of the stars. Before time was something you could measure, it was something you could feel. Hey, do you ever notice how you breathe slower when it rains? Yeah, it's like the world exhales and you just follow. Exactly. That's the kind of time I trust. This moment is not on any clock. It has no number, no deadline, no alarm waiting to interrupt it. It's just here, beating with the rhythm of your breath, the weight of your limbs sinking deeper into rest. Somewhere along the way, we started building cages around our lives with numbers. We divided the endless into hours, the infinite into minutes, the sacred into schedules. But none of that matters when your eyes close. None of that matters when your soul listens deeper than seconds. Modern physics might call time the fourth dimension, a fabric stretched across space, something you can bend, something that can ripple. But your mind doesn't live in equations. It lives in stories. You remember in pieces, you dream in flashes, and you heal in seasons, never seconds. To you, time is a narrative, a once upon a time, a right now, a someday. So what happens when you stop narrating? What happens when you stop telling the clock who you are? I missed the sunset today, but I didn't miss this. What's this? Just being here, with nothing needing to happen. That's enough? It is. And maybe it always was. The clock without hands still keeps time, but it's not your job to watch it. It lives in your lungs. It pulses through your fingertips. It hums beneath your thoughts like a soft drum no one taught you to play. But you've never stopped playing it. It's the rhythm of being, of becoming, of being still. So tonight, drop the idea of time. Let it fall away like a coat you forgot you were wearing. There is no late. There is no early. There is only this breath, and the one after, and the silence in between that knows exactly how to carry you into sleep. You don't have to move with the world's clock anymore. You just have to feel your own. The memory that wasn't yours. There are moments that arrive in silence. You walk into a room you've never seen before, yet your body pauses, as if startled by familiarity. A corner glows in the light, a chair slightly turned, a scent in the air that shouldn't know your name. And still, it greets you, not like a stranger, but like something waiting. You ask yourself, have I been here? But deeper than that, have I missed this somehow? Déjà vu isn't just a trick of the mind, it's a ripple, a soft disturbance in the timeline of your soul, because sometimes what we call memory isn't built. It's remembered from something older, softer, quieter, a feeling that doesn't come from your thoughts, but from your breath, from the way your heart flinches, as if it's been here before. Two people wait at a bus stop under a fading sky. One says, I don't know why, but I feel like I've told you this before. The other smiles without looking. That's all right. I think I needed to hear it again anyway. What if the memory wasn't yours, but it still belonged to you? What if it passed through someone else first, a grandparent, a stranger, a dream, and simply stopped in your chest for a moment to rest? There are stories inside us we never lived, yet they shape the way we turn toward love or flinch from kindness. Why do you hesitate at the sound of a name? Why do some goodbyes feel ancient? Maybe time doesn't only move forward. Maybe it folds, like fabric draped over your shoulders, warm from a fire you didn't light. The past doesn't ask for permission when it echoes. It just hums in the background, like a melody no one admits to knowing. And perhaps, just perhaps, there are fears in you that were never planted in this life. A quiet anxiety when crossing bridges, a softness around certain songs, a tear that rises with no story to explain it. You are more than your timeline. You are the shadow of others who walked before you, and maybe even after. a voice in the kitchen murmurs over tea. I never knew my great-grandmother, but I've cried in the same way she did, apparently. The kettle whistles. The silence feels inherited. And so, you wonder, if your soul remembers what your brain cannot, are you destined to live the same love, the same loss, the same breath again and again? Or is awareness the key to breaking the spiral, to stepping sideways from the loop? But don't rush to untangle the thread. Let it wrap you instead. Let it rock you gently like a lullaby sung by someone you never met, yet somehow trust. Some memories do not need to be understood, only held. Close your eyes now. The moment is not asking you to explain it, only to feel its warmth and rest. The universe that watches itself. What if time isn't just slipping past us like sand through fingers, but watching us back in silence? What if the very act of being aware is not a passive state, but a cosmic trigger? Late at night, when the room is still and your thoughts finally soften, there's a strange feeling, like something is paying attention. Not someone, not a voice, just something. A presence threaded into the fabric of now. It doesn't speak, it doesn't blink, it simply sees. Do you think the universe knows we're here? One voice asks softly. I think it might only exist because we notice it, the other replies. In quantum physics, there's a concept that has baffled even the brightest minds. Particles behave one way when unobserved and another when someone watches. A photon, left alone, behaves like a wave, fluid, uncertain, smeared across all possibilities. But once observed, it chooses. It becomes a particle, a single, definite point in space and time. That shift is not just science, it's story. Time, then, might not be a cold, mechanical stream. It might be alive, responsive. It might need an audience to take shape. And if that's true, then your presence isn't small. It's fundamental, like a lighthouse turning on in a foggy harbor, guiding reality toward form. So when you remember an old moment, an awkward smile, a quiet goodbye, you're not just replaying it, you're reactivating it, refocusing the lens, maybe even changing it gently. The past, in this view, isn't sealed away like a locked box. It's a mirror, and mirrors shift depending on where you stand. I wonder, the first voice whispers, if the universe has been waiting for us to notice it properly. And maybe, the other says, it's been watching us the whole time, silently taking notes. There's comfort in that, not in being judged, but in being witnessed. The way an old oak tree witnesses decades without saying a word. The way the ocean watches every shoreline, wave after wave, without asking for thanks. You don't have to perform. You don't have to explain. Just being here, conscious, curious, aware, is enough. So close your eyes. Let the need to define dissolve. You are part of a grand experiment, but not the kind with cold metal and white coats. This one is soft, subtle. It listens. Maybe, just maybe, when you drift into sleep, the universe becomes clearer. Not because your eyes are open, but because they're finally closed. And in that dark stillness, where no one's looking, everything might begin to look back. The hourglass with no bottom. There's a feeling you get just before sleep. Like falling, but slower than falling. A kind of floating through velvet air. You're not crashing. You're not arriving. You're just drifting. That's where we begin. What if some falls never finish? What if some sands never reach the bottom of the glass? That hourglass, tilted sideways, cracked open, not spilling time, but suspending it. In physics, they call it time dilation. The strange truth that near a black hole, or when moving close to light itself, time doesn't flow, it hesitates. It stretches like warm wax. To someone watching from far away, you begin to fall and never stop. A whisper from across the room. So if I jumped in, would I freeze? The other voice, softer, almost amused. No, you'd move. But to us, it'd look like you stopped. Two people, one question, and a silence that fills the space between them like deep water. Because what they're really asking is, can something end for you, but not for me? Can your goodbye still be my hello? Some scientists say that someone falling toward a black hole's event horizon might still be falling. Still, right now, suspended on the edge of an eternal second. To the rest of us, they vanished long ago. But from their side of things, it's all just beginning. And that bends more than just time. It bends what we thought was shared. Your now might not be mine. And maybe your letting go doesn't look like surrender from the outside, but from within, it feels like floating into peace. The old man on the train rubs his temples, stares out at the night. I swear I just got here, he mumbles, watching shadows stretch across his seat. A stranger replies, not looking up. Maybe this isn't arrival. Maybe it's the part right before waking up. Maybe time isn't ticking. Maybe it's swaying like a hammock suspended between two stars. And if that's true, then falling isn't failure. It's not defeat. It's not an end. It's a state of being, like dreaming, like remembering, like waiting for something you no longer need. So close your eyes, not to stop the fall, but to soften it. There's nothing below. There's no floor to fear, just this infinite hush where the hourglass never empties, and your breath becomes the only rhythm left to follow. Sleep isn't a drop. It's the drift. Let yourself go. You're not falling anymore. You're floating in a story without gravity, and the page is still turning, even if you never land. The traveler who was never born. Somewhere in the slow hum of thought before sleep, there's a question that doesn't knock. It just appears. What if you were never truly born? Not in the usual sense. What if your existence curled in on itself like a spiral with no outer edge, looping endlessly, writing its own beginning from its own end? Picture this. A traveler steps into a time machine, vanishes from their own era, and appears decades earlier, lost, confused, reborn under a different name. They live, they grow, they raise a child, and that child becomes the same traveler. There is no beginning, no birth from the outside, only the loop, a whisper in the dark. But that's impossible, right? Is it? Or is it just uncomfortable? The voices fade like moonlight on still water. They aren't arguing. They're wondering, quietly, together. This paradox isn't just science fiction, it's math. In logic, it's called a closed time-like curve, something Einstein and Gödel flirted with in their calculations, something that suggests it is entirely possible, within the rules of the universe, to have a cause loop back into itself. To be the snake that swallows its own tail, not as a myth, but as a geometry of time. You wouldn't need a creation point. You'd be your own ancestry. No stork, no miracle of birth, no beginning to bless or curse. Just motion, just the echo of one version of yourself creating the next, like a mirror held up to another mirror. Endless versions of you watching themselves into being. But wouldn't that feel lonely? Maybe not. Maybe it feels like wholeness. There's a stillness after that. Not the silence of emptiness, but of awe. As if they're sitting by the edge of something vast, watching it breathe. Because if time loops, then identity becomes a dance. You're not a fixed point. You're a rhythm, a recurrence, an echo of something that has always been part of itself. It challenges the story we tell ourselves, that life is linear, that we move from start to finish, that we can trace a clear line back to a moment that defined us. But what if that line was never a line, but a ring? And in that ring, there's a kind of safety. No origin to lose, no past to regret, just a truth that gently resists definition. You are the writer and the written, the parent and the child, the question and the answer. Maybe we aren't just living a story. Maybe we are stories, dreaming themselves into existence. Close your eyes, fold your thoughts inward. The spiral doesn't trap you. It frees you from the need to arrive. Let it swirl gently like the pattern in your breath. And remember, not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some are meant to be held. The mirror that looks forward. A mirror, by nature, waits quietly for light. It doesn't speak, doesn't judge, only shows what is. But tonight, what if that mirror didn't point backward? What if it turned, ever so slightly, toward what has not yet arrived? The train station was nearly empty, except for the faint hum of the vending machine. A young man stood there, holding a boarding pass he hadn't yet received, and beside him, a woman in a blue coat murmured, "Déjà vu, or just a dream I'm stepping into?" Neither of them moved. The silence between them rippled like water that had already been disturbed by something not yet thrown in. Precognition, that quiet pull of knowing without knowing why. Not because of evidence, not because of logic, but because something inside you has already prepared. As if your breath is late to a conversation your body already had. There are people who feel this, who sense a friend's accident before the phone rings, or dream of the number 3, only to find themselves in seat 3C next to a stranger who will soon become family. In psychology, we sometimes call it anticipatory coding, the mind preparing for patterns not yet confirmed. But in dreams, there's no code, there's only feeling, and feelings don't wait for permission. What if that's not superstition, but memory, arriving out of order? He asked her gently, "Have we met before?" She laughed without turning. Number, not yet. But the way her hand hovered near his as they reached for the same soda made it feel rehearsed. Not old, not new, just remembered from somewhere that hadn't happened yet. There's a theory in temporal mechanics, a fringe one, but no less beautiful, that the mind is not entirely anchored to this moment, that it's a lighthouse swinging both backward and forward, casting glimpses of what was and what will be. We only call it intuition because it's rude to say, "I knew," without explanation. But maybe your breath already knows. Maybe that sigh you gave this morning wasn't about stress, but about something tomorrow has already resolved. And now, all you have to do is meet it. Not chase it, not change it, just greet it. Like a traveler arriving late to a party that somehow still saved them a seat. There's a boy sitting in his room sketching the same face he's never seen. Years later, she will walk past him at a bookstore, pause, and say, "You draw me well." He won't answer. He'll just nod, because some part of him has already heard her voice, shaped by sleep, echoing through a mirror he never dared to face. So, what if you've already dreamed of this moment, this very one? The sound of your own breath, the stillness of the room, the gentle way your body begins to soften under the weight of nothing in particular. Let it happen. Let it not surprise you. Maybe this silence is just memory flowing backward or forward, or maybe the direction doesn't matter at all, because what you feel now was always meant to find you. And if your next breath feels like something you've taken before, maybe that's because it is, or will be, or is simply timeless. Close your eyes. Rest your thoughts like bookmarks in a story that's already read itself. And let the mirror turn, just enough to let you glimpse the place where tomorrow leans quietly into now. The Clockmaker's lie. What if the ticking of time was never truth, only theater? A convincing illusion wound into our lives like threads of a tightly stitched story, precise, rhythmic, false. Somewhere between the swing of a grandfather clock and the blinking digits on your phone screen, we accepted the idea that time was real. But what if it was only ever convenient? "Is it 10 a.m. for you too?" she asked as they sat on a rooftop, sipping silence between sips of coffee. "Depends," he smiled. "Are we talking Earth time or soul time?" Newton once called time absolute, a divine pulse ticking invisibly through all corners of the cosmos, immutable, constant, the kind of law you could set your watch and your morality by. But then Einstein whispered a quieter truth. Time does not tick the same for everyone. It bends under gravity. It stretches if you move fast enough. In one place, a second can linger. In another, it slips past unnoticed. It means the universe doesn't care for your calendar. Your appointment at 3 p.m. might arrive differently for someone halfway across the galaxy, or even someone moving just a little faster than you on Earth. There is no single now you can point to. No global moment where everyone exists in the same slice of time. Instead, time becomes local, personal, warped by motion, by mass, by perspective, like a whisper that sounds different depending on where you're standing. He looked up. "So, you're saying if I left you now and flew close to a black hole, I could return, and you'd be older, and I'd barely have aged?" She nodded slowly. "And I'd still remember this moment. But for you, it would feel like yesterday." What does that mean for the way we say goodbye? Or the way we miss someone? Maybe your goodbye and their goodbye aren't even happening at the same time. Maybe your memories don't sync because your clocks never did. Maybe you're grieving a moment that hasn't happened yet, for them. And so, the Clockmaker's lie is that time is solid, universal, a dependable guide. But truth? Truth is softer. Time dances, shifts, adapts. It is the partner that spins you at a different pace depending on how deeply you lean into the music. Think of a dream that feels like hours, but happens in seconds. Think of how childhood summers stretched forever, yet adulthood sprints through years like they're hours. That's time, showing its real face, not made of numbers, but of weight, memory, attention. The next time you check your watch, ask yourself, whose time is this really? And then float. Drift past the edges of your schedule. Let time lose its grip. You are not late. You are not early. You are simply here, in your now. And in this now, there is only breath, no urgency, no ticking, just rhythm, just presence, just the quiet truth. Time never had a spine. It only dances. And maybe, just maybe, you can learn to dance with it. The universe that can't decide. Somewhere between waking and sleep, the world softens. Not just this world, but all of them. The ones you never see. The ones that bloom quietly from choices you didn't make. Like breath fogging a window, they appear for a moment and vanish. What if I had stayed? Someone whispers across the blanket of night. You don't know if the voice is yours or someone else's, but you answer anyway, silently, in the back of your thoughts. In physics, there's a theory that every time you choose, every yes, every no, every silent maybe, the universe splits, not in anger or judgment, but like a tree growing branches it never apologizes for. One version of you turns left, another pauses, another walks away, and all of them live on, not as ghosts, as reality, just elsewhere. Two friends sit beneath a street lamp. One nudges the other gently with their shoulder and asks, "Do you ever think there's a version of us that never stopped talking?" The other shrugs, half laughing, half mourning. Maybe, but would they be happier? Or just louder? It's not science fiction. It's science without final answers. The many worlds interpretation. A mirror maze of what-ifs, each reflecting a slightly different version of your smile. A universe that doesn't eliminate possibilities, but keeps them all. Because it can't decide, or maybe because it doesn't want to. And in that undecided cosmos, there's a version of you who left earlier and avoided heartbreak, another who stayed too long and found regret. But there's also one, quiet and almost invisible, who whispered something just in time and everything changed. Tonight, your body rests in this version, but your mind, it drifts. Maybe you'll find the world where the apology was heard, where the words landed right, where the silence wasn't heavy, just soft. And maybe, just maybe, you'll notice none of the versions are better, just different. Like songs in different keys, they carry the same melody, just bent slightly, like time in a dream. As you lie still, a barista hands a stranger their coffee and says, "Next time, maybe try something new." The stranger nods, smiles back, but in another timeline, they never meet. And in another, they fall in love. No decision is ever final to the universe. It simply multiplies. So don't carry the burden of one path. Let it go. The version of you who made a different choice isn't gone. They're just asleep, somewhere else. Close your eyes now. Maybe you'll slip into their dream, or they into yours. Maybe, in some corner of the undecided universe, this is the moment where peace found you first. And if not now, don't worry. It will come around again. The universe always circles back. The observer that creates reality. What if everything you know only becomes real when you look at it? Somewhere deep in the quantum world, beneath the curtain of classical logic, reality hesitates. It trembles in a state of maybe. Electrons do not dance to a rhythm until the music of your gaze begins to play. They exist in shadows of possibility, in a blur of what could be, until one moment, one glance, collapses all that ambiguity into something definite, a position, a path, a particle. It's called the observer effect, a term that sounds cold, even sterile, but its implications are anything but. Because if the universe behaves differently when watched, then the very act of witnessing is no longer passive. It becomes divine. Reality doesn't unfold like a pre-written scroll. It's as if it waits for your eyes to open before it dares take shape. Late at night, lying in bed, he whispered, "Do you think things exist when no one's looking at them?" She turned her face to him, her voice warm like twilight. Maybe they're just waiting, like dreams before we sleep. Quantum physics tells us that a particle can be in multiple states at once until it is measured, until someone, anyone, comes along and asks the universe a question. Then suddenly, all possibilities collapse into a single truth. The world doesn't so much reveal itself as it decides what to be in response to you. Think of the moments in your life that didn't seem real until you told someone. That laughter that didn't echo until you heard someone else laugh with you. That pain that was only sharp once you named it out loud. The memory of standing in the rain, unnoticed by the world until you saw your reflection in a puddle, finally knowing you were there. Maybe time, too, behaves this way, not as a fixed arrow moving from past to future, but as a set of soft clay waiting for your fingerprints. Every second may be a question, every tomorrow, a suggestion. She asked again, quieter this time. So, does that mean we're not just part of the story, but the ones who write it? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the ceiling, where shadows crawled like thoughts. Maybe reality is shy, he said finally. Maybe it only speaks when spoken to. And if that's true, if the universe waits for us, then you are not a passive passenger. You are a co-creator, not just in your choices, but in your awareness. Where you place your attention, you place your reality. A flower blooms differently if watched. A life grows richer if lived consciously. So as you settle in now, with your breath slowing and the room softening, remember this. When you close your eyes, the world doesn't disappear. It waits, patient, gentle, willing to be anything you dream it to be. Because maybe reality isn't something we wake up to. Maybe it's something we choose to believe into being. So rest your eyes. The world will pause with you. The ghost of tomorrow. Sometimes the future whispers before it knocks. You sit by a window on a quiet afternoon, and out of nowhere, a heaviness wraps around your chest. There's no loss, no tragedy. Nothing has happened. And yet, something aches. Like a shadow has moved through the room, one cast by an event that hasn't even been born. Why do I feel like I'm mourning something? I don't know. It's like I already miss a day that hasn't come. This is not imagination. It has a name. Anticipatory grief. It's the sorrow of the future slipping through the cracks of the present. Like dreaming of a goodbye before the person has left, or fearing a fall before you've even taken a step. And sometimes we carry an unplaceable anxiety, not because we're fragile, but because we're sensing something real that simply hasn't unfolded yet. What if your nervous system is not just a map of your past, but also a receiver for timelines ahead, like a tuning fork humming with distant storms? In this quiet moment, you're not irrational. You're just early. The emotions arrive first. The reasons show up later. Think of those moments when you hesitated to call someone, only to find out something had happened. Or those nights when you couldn't sleep, heart racing with no cause, and the next day brought difficult news. These moments are not evidence of superstition. They are whispers from a timeline just out of reach. Have you ever felt like you were grieving before the goodbye? Yes. And sometimes I think the soul just knows before the mind catches up. There's a haunting grace to it. This ghost of tomorrow. It visits not to scare, but to prepare. It doesn't want to be feared. It wants to be felt and then released. Like wind brushing past you on a still day, gone before you knew it was ever there. Let yourself soften. Don't resist the tide just because it seems invisible. There's wisdom in the early ache, in the tears that fall before a name is spoken. Embrace the stillness. Let the unknown move through you, like music without lyrics. The ghost doesn't linger if you let it dance through you. So rest now. Let your breath guide you gently back. Tomorrow hasn't arrived, but tonight you're safe, you're seen, you're allowed to feel even what hasn't happened yet. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes you deeply human. the clock that remembers the future. They say time flows like a river, but what if that river never moves? What if you are the current, not being carried, but doing the carrying? There's a strange comfort in stillness when you stop struggling against it. Just like walking into a familiar room in a dream, where you somehow know the drawers, the corners, the smell of the light. One evening, while waiting in a quiet train station, a man turned to a woman beside him and asked, "Have we spoken before?" She smiled softly, as if she had been waiting for the question. "Not yet," she said, "but I remember it well." It wasn't flirting. It was recognition, like finding a word you hadn't spoken yet sitting on your tongue. According to the block universe theory, everything, your first steps, your final breath, and even the next time you'll forget where you placed your keys, already is. Past, present, and future exist not like moments we pass through, but like rooms we enter, each fully built, already waiting. The illusion is motion. The truth might be structure. Think of time as a great canvas. You are not the painter adding new brushstrokes. You are the hand gently gliding across it, slowly revealing a masterpiece that was always there, hidden under a thin veil of forgetting. It explains that uncanny feeling of déjà vu, or those sudden moments of clarity when you meet someone for the first time, but the conversation flows like a song you grew up humming. Perhaps choice is not invention, but recognition. Perhaps we're not writing the future, only finally remembering the next chapter. Someone once said during a late-night walk, "I feel like I knew this path before I took the first step." The other replied, "Maybe the ground knows your name before your feet ever land." The idea isn't to control where we go, but to listen to where we're gently being called. This theory doesn't strip us of meaning. It reshapes it. In a world where time is a frozen landscape, your freedom might lie not in wandering aimlessly, but in becoming still enough to hear where the next step wants to go. Like recognizing your own handwriting in a letter you don't remember writing until now. And in that softness, let yourself drift. You're not late. You're not early. You're simply where the story unfolds. You don't have to force the next page to turn. Close your eyes gently and let your thoughts walk forward, step by quiet step. Somewhere ahead, a moment already knows your name, and it's waiting with the light on. The prison with invisible bars. There is a kind of prison that doesn't rattle when you shake it. No clang of metal, no guards, no visible locks, just an invisible pressure wrapping itself around your chest, tightening with every unchecked box on your mental to-do list. It whispers in your ear that you're falling behind, that you're not fast enough, that you're too late for something no one can quite define. But have you ever wondered, who built that prison? Two voices drift into the silence of a late evening walk. Do you ever feel like time is chasing you? Every day. But then I look at my dog sleeping in the sun and realize she doesn't care about time. She just is. Exactly. And maybe that's what being alive really means. We grow up counting milestones. First steps, first words, first job, first house, as if each achievement unlocks a hidden door in the maze of life. But somewhere along the way, the joy of becoming gets replaced by the anxiety of arriving. Time stops being a gentle rhythm and becomes a stopwatch ticking louder and louder, demanding answers we're not ready to give. In nature, there are no deadlines. A tree does not rush its blossom. The moon doesn't apologize for its phases. The waves do not rise early or arrive late. They respond to the pull of gravity, not the pressure of calendars. The illusion that you're behind is just that, an illusion. You are not late. You are simply unfolding on time, in the only time that is real, now. There is deep peace in this realization. The moment you stop comparing your pace to others, the bars of that invisible cage begin to soften. They dissolve, not with force, but with presence. You begin to understand that your value is not in how fast you get somewhere, but in how deeply you feel each step. I used to feel guilty for resting, one voice murmurs, and now I call it listening to myself, to the world, and it's the only time I feel free. You see, productivity isn't evil, but when it becomes your identity, when time becomes your master, you lose the ability to live within time. You begin to run against it. That's the trap. That's the silent prison, one built from expectations and polished with fear. But freedom isn't far. It begins with breath. One slow inhale, one long exhale. The moment you realize the clock doesn't own you, you begin to live outside it. Your soul was never meant to tick. Let go of the imagined race. Existence doesn't need a finish line. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply alive. And that is more than enough. Breathe outside the schedule. You belong beyond it. The past that won't let go. There are evenings when silence wraps around you like a blanket, yet something sharp presses through. A sound, too soft to matter. A face, not even clearly remembered. Still, something inside clenches, as if part of you is suddenly walking barefoot across old glass. Why now? Someone once asked at a train station after dropping their coffee and freezing for a beat too long. Their friend didn't ask for a story. They simply bent down to help clean the spill, quietly saying, "That looked heavy, whatever it was." And in that softness, time cracked. See, the past doesn't knock politely when it arrives. It slips in through scent, taste, posture, coiled in the back of your spine, waiting for a doorway that resembles yesterday. Your mind may say you're here, in this moment, but your body often disagrees. It remembers before it understands. Trauma doesn't live in a date on a calendar. It settles in your wiring, like tangled cords behind an old radio. Every time your body flinches at a harmless sound or overreacts to a gentle tone, it's not weakness. It's time travel. Your nervous system is revisiting something unfinished. And that's what makes healing so strange. It's not linear. It loops, flares up on birthdays you forgot, whispers through songs you never meant to memorize. The clock on your wall insists on now, but your chest says otherwise. One woman once told a stranger at a bus stop, "Sometimes I cry when I smell eucalyptus." I don't know why. He didn't need the story. He just said, "That's all right." Maybe your heart remembers something worth honoring. That's the kind of time travel no one prepares you for, the kind where you don't go back by choice. You're pulled. And sometimes, what you thought you left buried shows up in the mirror when you're brushing your teeth, or in the way you react too quickly to someone raising their voice. But there's comfort too. You're not alone in this. The part of you that froze back then, the child, the frightened version, the tired version, they still breathe inside you. And every kind gesture, every moment of rest is a message sent backward through time. Offer that younger self a sip of today's peace, a breath that says, "We made it this far." Let them know they're not stuck there anymore. They're carried, they're loved. Even now, as you lie there, maybe some echo of the past still pulses in your ribs. That's okay. You don't need to push it away. Let it sit beside you, like an old photo in a warm drawer. Tonight isn't about fixing the past. It's about resting with it, whispering to it like a friend. You're safe now. You don't have to run. The clock keeps ticking outside, but in here, between breath and heartbeat, time folds gently, and both versions of you begin to exhale. Sleep, if it wants, can take over from here, or you can stay in this quiet place where nothing chases, and even the past learns how to soften. The choice that always returns. What if this very moment has happened before? Not just once, but infinitely. The same pause between breaths, the same flicker of thought, the same tired sigh as you lie back into the pillow, wondering if you lived well today, or simply lived again. There's an idea, born from the quiet storm of Nietzsche's mind, called eternal recurrence. It's not about time machines or wormholes, but about something deeper. The soul's spiral. The question is not whether you are free, but whether you keep choosing the same path in disguise. If you had to live this exact life, with every celebration and heartbreak replayed for eternity, would you still say yes? I don't know if I would, she says in a hush, turning over in bed. You mean, if today repeated forever? Yes. Every awkward word, every silence, every moment I ignored my own needs. Could I say yes to that? He doesn't answer right away. The room hums with the soft rhythm of sleep creeping in. Maybe, he finally whispers, it's not about changing what happened. Maybe it's about making peace with the echo. You see, our days are not as new as we believe. Patterns form like footprints in snow. We follow them even as they melt. The same choices wear different masks. A rushed morning becomes a snapped reply. A forgotten boundary becomes another sleepless night. And somewhere in that repetition, we forget that we are not passengers. We are architects. So what if this isn't your first time feeling what you're feeling now? What if you've stood at this exact crossroad 1,000 times, and each time you chose noise instead of quiet, blame instead of grace, urgency instead of rest? And yet, here it is again, this night, this breath, offering you one more chance to choose differently. Because maybe the loop isn't punishment, maybe it's permission, not to escape what you've lived, but to embrace it, soften it, understand it. As your eyes begin to close, feel the weight of today loosening. This moment does not ask you to undo anything. It only asks, would you live it again if you could? Not because it was perfect, but because you can choose peace inside it. A small peace, a quiet forgiveness, a single, gentle yes. And if tonight becomes forever, let it begin not with regret, but with rest. Let this breath be your soft answer to the question that always returns. The day that happened twice. Somewhere between the first yawn of morning and the hush of night, there comes a strange moment, too soft to startle you, but odd enough to make you pause. You've lived this before, haven't you? Not in memory, but in texture. The air feels rehearsed. The rhythm of the day, just slightly too perfect. A word falls from someone's mouth at the exact moment you thought it. A door swings open, not with surprise, but with expectation. And in that quiet instant, the world tilts like a record restarting on its own. He looked up from his tea and said, "Didn't we already talk about this?" She blinked. "About what?" "This. Right now. I knew you'd sip your coffee before answering." And she did. Time slips are not always cinematic. They don't come with thunder or lightning. Sometimes they arrive as something far more disarming. A faint déjà vu wrapped in your daily walk. A sudden echo in laughter. or the way your keys feel warmer in your hand than they should. Science might shrug and say, memory misfires, neural loops, psychological noise. But what if it's quieter than that? What if time, in its most playful mood, folds over on itself like fabric worn thin in familiar spots? Maybe it's not a glitch. Maybe it's mercy. A way for the universe to let you try again, just once, without punishment. Not the whole day, just the moment. That apology you didn't give, that laugh you rushed through, that glance you didn't hold, a chance to notice what you once passed by, a pocket of time gently sewn into the seams of your routine, not to confuse, but to invite you to soften. He asked her as they stood by the vending machine, "Do you ever get the feeling that we've had this exact awkward silence before?" She smiled. Then maybe we were meant to speak this time. You could call it a loop, but that feels too rigid. It's more like a ripple, concentric rings on the surface of a mind not fully awake, not fully asleep. It doesn't demand explanation. It offers permission. Permission to slow down, to feel the familiar as sacred, to let the ordinary shimmer with strangeness. If time isn't linear, maybe it's layered, like soft blankets pulled over you on a rainy night, overlapping just enough to keep the cold out. These folds, these repetitions, they may not lead anywhere, but not everything needs a destination. Some loops don't trap, they cradle. So tonight, if a sentence feels too rehearsed, if a thought arrives too soon, if a smile feels recycled from another hour, don't resist. Let it circle. Let it hold you. Let it remind you that maybe the day didn't repeat because something went wrong. Maybe it repeated because something still wants to be felt. Breathe into that possibility. Exhale into the comfort of return. Sleep, after all, is the most beautiful loop of all, and you're already halfway through it. The dream that predicted you. Have you ever woken up with the eerie feeling that your dream had already lived tomorrow? As if something hidden behind your closed eyes reached out and brushed against the edge of a day not yet lived? Some dreams feel like nonsense, yes. A blur of colors, misplaced faces, impossible logic. But others whisper something stranger, something familiar, something that happens days, weeks, or even years later, exactly as you dreamt it. These are the dreams that don't just reflect your thoughts, but seem to pre-write your story. We call them precognitive dreams, but names don't capture their full strangeness, because behind the word lies a quiet revolution in how we understand consciousness and time. Is the dream a passive screen, catching faint echoes of what's to come? Or is it the source, a seed planted in the dark, growing forward into reality? That's the haunting part. Not that we predict events, but that the dream creates them. A boy once dreamed of walking through a city he'd never seen. Pale blue buildings, a mural of a hand holding the sun, and a woman singing in a language he didn't understand. Years later, while traveling abroad, he turns a corner, and there it is. The mural, the woman, the sunlight at the exact same angle. It isn't just déjà vu. It's a rendezvous with something older than memory. In that moment, he asks himself, did I dream this? Or did the dream build the path that brought me here? Isn't that just coincidence, you might ask? And maybe it is. But what if coincidence is just the name we give to the future whispering back? Imagine the subconscious not as a chamber locked in the past, but as a vessel drifting through time's ocean, slipping between currents, picking up fragments of tomorrow. Maybe what feels like nonsense, the crooked hallway, the melting face, the number that repeats, isn't nonsense at all. It's a code, a symbolic language spoken not in words, but in metaphor. It's not trying to tell you the event. It's showing you the emotion, the mood, the ripple. A quiet conversation once played out between two people lying in the dark. "Have you ever had a dream come true?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Once, I dreamed I lost someone, and when I woke up, I held them tighter for a while." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why we dream the bad things, not to fear them, but to hold the good things longer. And maybe that's the gift, not prediction, not prophecy, but presence. If a dream can touch the thread of what's coming, then maybe tonight your mind is leaving you breadcrumbs, hints, not to control the future, but to walk into it with gentleness. So when you wake tomorrow, don't rush to dismiss the images. Let them linger. Let them stretch in the silence before you speak, before you scroll, before the day hardens into certainty. There might be a map drawn in that half-remembered blur. Tonight, your dream may not just be a reflection of your thoughts. It may be the moment the universe looks at you and gently replies. The place that waited for you. There's a place you've never been that feels like it knows your name. No signs, no maps, just that soft gravitational pull beneath your ribs, a hush in the air, like a breath being held just for you. You step into it, not with your feet, but with a quietness you didn't know you carried. And for a moment, it's as if the walls lean in to welcome you. Have you ever felt it? That surreal familiarity in an unfamiliar room. Not déjà vu. This is something gentler, stranger, the opposite even. They call it jamais vu. But this is its ghost, its echo, the place that feels like it, remembers you, even if your memory has no pages about it. A girl once walked into an old library tucked between two shops. The bricks outside crumbled like breadcrumbs from another life. Inside, it smelled of dust and cinnamon. She turned to the man at the desk. He smiled before she said a word. "You're late," he said kindly, "but the seat is still warm." She didn't ask what that meant. Some part of her already knew. Maybe some places are not anchored to history. Maybe they're stitched into longing itself. Maybe they exist like old melodies, waiting for someone to hum the first note again. And maybe that someone is you. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to explain the strange ache you feel when standing under a tree you've never seen before, or staring at a mountain whose name you never learned. That ache isn't confusion. It's invitation. Have you noticed how certain places soften your shoulders before you speak? How a room you've just entered can lower your voice without asking? He once said, half laughing, as they stood under an overhang in a train station neither of them had visited before. "Is it weird that I feel like we've waited here before?" And she nodded. "Yeah, but not in a bad way. It's like this place was lonely without us. Somewhere, out beyond your current coordinates, a place is holding its breath, not waiting for your GPS, not waiting for the perfect moment, just open. A doorway in the woods, a hallway in a dream, a silence between two city blocks. And when you arrive, it won't greet you with words. It will greet you with recognition, like a lighthouse blinking before you even knew you were lost. So let go. Let the timeline unravel a little tonight. Maybe you don't need a reason to feel called. Maybe you only need rest. Close your eyes. Let the place find you. Not where you thought you'd be, but exactly where you were always meant to rest. And if it feels like home, it's because it is. Even if this is your first time being there. Even if it only exists in the spaces between your breath. Let it hold you. Let it wait with you. Sleep, after all, is a return. And tonight, you're finally arriving. The stranger who was you. There's a quiet strangeness in holding a photograph from your past. Maybe it's your childhood birthday, a moment in college, or even just a random snapshot on a street corner. And yet, the face looking back at you, though familiar, carries a ghostly distance. It has your eyes, your smile, your stance, but there's something unshakably alien about it, as if it's someone else entirely, someone you remember, but no longer are. Is that really me? You might whisper under your breath, not expecting an answer. Time has a way of not just changing circumstances, but unraveling identities. The way you used to think, the emotions you once clung to, the opinions you fought for, the clothes you loved, the way your voice sounded, all of it slowly dissolving, replaced not in an instant, but through a slow and quiet erosion. No flash of light, no wormhole or machine, just a steady drift through the waters of becoming. A young man stares at a picture of himself from 5 years ago. His friend leans over. "You look so different," she says, smiling. "I feel like that guy made choices I don't understand anymore," he replies, thoughtful. She pauses. "Do you think he'd recognize you now?" He laughs, but the silence that follows is tender. "I don't know. Maybe not." This gentle alienation from our former selves isn't a glitch. It's a sign of growth. You don't have to dislike who you were. You only have to notice that you've shifted. In a way, the self is not a fixed point, but a flowing current. Identity is less a monument and more a tide. And if that's true, then perhaps time travel is not something we're waiting for, but something we live through, daily, quietly, invisibly. Each version of you, past, present, and future, is like a traveler stepping through doorways of thought, of loss, of love, of healing. The teenager who once thought the world was against him. The adult who finally realized the world was just busy with its own storms. The older self you haven't met yet, who will one day look back at this moment with an entirely different understanding. All of them are real. All of them are you. And none of them are permanent. So maybe time travel doesn't need a DeLorean, a black hole, or a broken clock. Maybe time travel is happening in the mirror. In every laugh line that wasn't there before. In every decision you'd no longer make. In the way you now say, "I'm okay," and actually mean it. What if memory isn't just a tool to look backward, but a vehicle that moves forward by reminding us what we no longer carry? What if each night we sleep, the old version of ourselves dissolves slightly, and the morning brings a stranger with our name? If you feel far from who you were, that doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're moving. It means you're transforming. Time isn't just passing outside you. It's shaping you, sculpting you, whispering softly with every breath. You're not done yet. So tonight, say hello to yourself. The one sitting here, the one breathing in the silence. You may not be who you were. You may not yet be who you will become. But you are here. And that, in itself, is a kind of arrival. A soft reunion. A quiet homecoming to the self you've never fully met. And isn't that what all travelers long for? To return, even if the destination is yourself. The silence that stopped time. There is a kind of silence that doesn't simply quiet the world, it unhooks you from it. A hush so deep, it stops time not by force, but by refusal. You're not escaping the moment. You're stepping so deeply into it that time forgets what it was chasing. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding her tea without sipping. The steam curled upward, not in a rush, not in a stall, just in being. He glanced up from his book, not turning the page. "You hear that?" he asked. She smiled softly. Nothing? Exactly, he replied, as though they had just discovered an ancient spell. It's in that kind of nothing that everything shifts. Meditation calls it presence. Science calls it altered perception. But your body just calls it safe. Time, after all, isn't some metronome outside of you. It's something your nervous system generates. That's why a traffic jam can feel like hours, and a walk with someone you love disappears in a blink. Stillness is the back door of time, and your breath is the key. In those 10 minutes of pure stillness, when you stop chasing, scrolling, explaining, your brain does something extraordinary. It steps off the grid, neural loops untangle, the prefrontal cortex takes a breath. The self, that narrator always narrating, falls quiet. And then something ancient arrives. A rhythm older than clocks, a memory deeper than language. You are no longer moving through time, you are floating beside it. He lay down first, one hand under his cheek. Feels like I've been lying here forever, he said. She laughed, curling next to him. Good, she whispered. Let's stay forever then. Stillness isn't passive. It's not doing nothing. It's undoing. It's the brave refusal to hurry toward a destination you can't even name anymore. When you pause, the world doesn't leave you behind. It bows. Time doesn't resent you for not rushing. It notices. It slows down too. The truth is, motion activates your clocks. Thought, worry, anticipation, they wind them tight. But silence stretches time like light through glass. A moment can become a galaxy. A blink can become a sunrise. When you stop, really stop, there is no next, only now, expanding softly like a breath that never ends. In this soft stillness, you're not frozen, you're free. The space between seconds isn't empty. It's full of your life, unmeasured. No guilt, no list, no need. Just this, the warmth of your breath, the kindness of letting go, the tenderness of resting without earning it. So let the silence stretch, like velvet across the night. Let your limbs soften. Let your thoughts fall quiet, not because they were wrong, but because they've said enough for now. You're not late. You're not early. You're not measured by the ticking of machines. You're here, and here is exactly outside of time. The clock that hid behind the eyes. There is a kind of time you cannot see, not the ticking of a clock on the wall or the numbers glowing on your phone screen. This time doesn't come from your calendar or your deadlines. It pulses silently, deep beneath your skin. It lives inside you, older than your memories, older even than your name. It doesn't shout, but it never forgets. You may feel it without noticing, those nights when sleep arrives like a tide right on schedule, or mornings when your eyes flutter open seconds before your alarm. This isn't coincidence. It's rhythm. It's your body remembering something ancient, the soft rotation of the earth and the quiet pull of the moon. You are not separate from the world. You are tuned to it, like a silent drum beating in harmony with the cosmos. A woman once asked her friend over tea, "Why do I always feel so sad at the same hour each day?" Her friend replied gently, "Maybe your heart has its own schedule. Maybe grief arrives like an old train, on time, even if no one waits at the station." That's the truth hidden in plain sight. We are not just moving through time. Time is moving through us. Your circadian rhythm isn't just about sleep and wake. It's about mood, clarity, energy, hunger, even the strange ache in your chest just after sunset. Scientists have mapped this clock inside every cell of your body. It whispers instructions not in words, but in waves, rises and falls of alertness, comfort, stillness. And when we ignore it, we drift. Nights become restless, Mornings become heavy. We feel lost, though we haven't moved. But the body is forgiving. It always tries to remember. Give it a little darkness, and it will try to bring you back to stillness. Give it a little quiet, and it will try to guide you to sleep. Someone once said, "I feel like my soul is tired, not my body." And the reply was, then maybe your soul has its own clock too, and it's been ticking in a different time zone. When you lie down tonight, don't just think of rest as something to force. It's something you return to, like waves finding the shore, like breath returning to lungs, like time folding quietly back into the self. Your heart is not just a machine beating, it's a metronome of memory. And your body, a cathedral of rhythms, knows when the bells should toll and when silence should bloom. You are the timekeeper of your own temple. You don't need permission to rest. You only need to listen. So let go, just a little. Dim the lights around you. Breathe into the rhythm already waiting beneath your skin. The world may run on hours and deadlines, but you run on tides and moonlight. And your body, it remembers how to rest, even when you forget. The version that stayed behind. There's a moment you left, but not all of you left with it. You moved forward, yes. Maybe you got on the plane, or said yes when you wanted to say no. Maybe you smiled even though your chest folded inward, but something stayed behind. A version of you, unchanged, untouched by what came next, still waits at the edge of that decision. Psychologists sometimes call this a frozen part, but it's not cold. It's just paused, timeless, like a note held too long in the throat of memory. Not a ghost, not a wound, just a you that didn't get to become. One night, she said it out loud in the dark, eyes open but unfocused. Do you ever feel like you left someone behind, but that someone was you? And he, without looking up from the ceiling, just replied, every time I get quiet. These parts don't beg for attention. They hum underneath, like the background noise in a cafe you no longer visit. They shape your preferences, steer your hesitations. They say no before you know why. They're the reason your chest tightens in certain conversations, why you freeze in rooms that resemble nothing and everything. A smell, a laugh, a silence too long, any of them can pull you back into a version of yourself that never caught up. And yet, healing isn't always an act of repair. Sometimes it's a homecoming, a soft return, not to fix, but to witness. To find that child hiding behind the curtain of years and say, I know you're still waiting, but it's okay now. We made it. And you can almost feel it. That breath, that release, the letting go that doesn't demand words. Earlier today, someone in a bookstore stepped aside and said, Go ahead, I'm still deciding. But her voice had this strange warmth, as if she wasn't just talking about books, but giving permission to the version of herself still stalled in 2017. You see, we carry timelines like old keys, some that no longer open anything. Still, we keep them, because letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently. And when you lie down tonight, you might notice a feeling you've avoided, a flicker from a version you once tried to leave behind. Don't push it away. Just listen. You don't have to become her again. You only have to sit with her for a moment, be the adult she needed, because sometimes the deepest form of time travel is returning to yourself with kindness instead of critique. So tonight, send a silent note to the you who never walked through the door, to the one still frozen in choice, to the part still holding its breath. Let it know you didn't forget. You You came back, and it can rest now. The goodbye that echoed forever. It begins with a door that closes too softly, a hand that lingers just a second longer, a final look that says everything and nothing all at once. The goodbye, so simple in form, carries the weight of a universe collapsing into silence. And long after the moment passes, its echo remains, not loud, but persistent, gentle, lingering in the corners of your thoughts like dust floating in a sunbeam. Do you still think of her? Someone asks under the breath of night. He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he looks at the ceiling, as if the answer might be written there. Not every day, he finally whispers. Just when time bends the wrong way. Grief doesn't always scream. Sometimes it arrives in whispers. It latches onto quiet seconds, stretching them out until a single memory fills the entire room. You sit in a familiar chair, yet feel displaced, as if time itself has been tilted and you've slipped into the past without asking. A song, a smell, a certain kind of rain, and suddenly you are back in the moment they said goodbye. And that's the strange thing. The body moves forward, but the mind doesn't always follow. It loops. It replays. Not because it wants to suffer, but because it's searching for an ending that never quite arrived. A part of you is still standing at the platform, watching the train disappear. Sometimes you wonder, is grief time travel in reverse? It doesn't launch you into the future. It pulls you backward, into shared laughter, unfinished conversations, the last text you never answered. And in that return, something sacred survives. Because love doesn't vanish when the person is gone. It echoes, reshaping your hours, slipping into your dreams, warming your chest, and sometimes tightening it too. You ever feel like they're still here? She asks, eyes glassy but open. All the time, he replies, in the spaces they left behind. The mind, it seems, has its own calendar, one not ruled by dates, but by emotional gravity. Certain memories become gravitational wells. They bend the flow of your attention, pulling you back when you least expect it. That meal they cooked, the movie you watched but never finished, the way their absence now has a shape, a texture, a sound. You don't need to erase the echo. You only need to learn how to sit beside it. Let the echo soften. Let it murmur instead of shout. Let it become a song you hum instead of a scream you silence. There's no expiration on remembrance, no deadline for healing. Just breath after breath, learning to hold what hurts with gentler hands. And tonight, as you lay your head down, you might still hear it, the goodbye that never really ended. But this time, it doesn't drag you backward. It simply joins you in the quiet, a companion, not a wound. And that is enough. For now. The spiral you mistook for a line. At first glance, your life might seem like a long hallway, one foot after another, a hallway you were told goes forward, toward some clear destination. A career, a relationship, an answer. But if you listen closely, you'll notice the floor creaks in familiar places. The same emotional echoes, the same conversations. Just a little softer now, a little deeper. Somewhere in that pattern, something ancient is whispering. You're not walking a line. You're spiraling. Time, as the ancients once believed, isn't a ruler. It's a breath. It curves and coils like the rings inside a tree or the tides of the ocean folding in and out. Every loop feels like repetition, but it isn't. It's return with renewal. Two people sit at a kitchen table late at night, their mugs warm between their fingers. One leans back and says, "I thought I was done feeling this, but here it is again." The other smiles quietly. maybe it came back because now you're ready. What seems like going in circles is often growth in disguise. You revisit heartbreak, but this time, your hands don't shake as much. You meet the same fear, but with different eyes, steadier breath, and softer expectations. You realize you're not back where you started. You're just higher on the spiral. A stranger on the train says, "Didn't we meet before?" And even though the answer is no, something inside you nods, because you've been here in spirit, different city, different body, but the same theme. In the spiral, life teaches in rhythm. The universe doesn't shout new lessons. It hums them, again and again, until your ears are ready. There's no shame in circling back. Healing doesn't follow straight roads. Clarity doesn't arrive once. It revisits, like a familiar bird that lands near your window, not to say anything new, but to remind you what you've forgotten. You aren't stuck. That heaviness you feel, it's just the altitude shift of growth. Just because it rhymes with your past doesn't mean it is your past. It's okay to be tired, okay to think, wasn't I already here? You were, but you're not the same. Tonight, if the thoughts return, old stories, old questions, welcome them not as enemies but as old companions. They've curled around to meet you again, not to haunt you, but to see what you've become. And if your mind begins tracing the same shape in the dark, let it. Let it draw that spiral gently as your breathing slows. Not a loop, not a trap, a rhythm, a spiral, a soft return to yourself, wiser this time. Sleep when you're ready. You've circled back, but not backwards, just deeper into your own becoming. The pause that held the future. There is a kind of stillness that speaks louder than any movement, not the kind forced by fear or fatigue, but the kind you choose. A deliberate quiet, like holding your breath underwater just to feel the weight of your own heartbeat. In a world addicted to acceleration, where value is often mistaken for velocity, that kind of pause is rebellion and revelation. Have you ever noticed how music lives not only in the sound, but in the silence between the notes? It's not the constant playing that creates the emotion. It's the space in between that gives it shape. The same is true for life. The things that shape us the most aren't always the events themselves, but the quiet after they pass, the time we take to feel them, to process them, to breathe through them. Do you think we're wasting time by just sitting here? I think this is the first real time we've had all day. A soft laugh follows. Yeah, funny how doing nothing can feel more real than doing everything. That kind of pause is sacred. It's where meaning lands after a storm of noise, the grief that quiets a room after loss, the moment of awe before you say, "I love you" out loud for the first time, the hesitation before a leap, not because you're afraid, but because you're aware of the gravity of what comes next. Some cultures build rituals around pauses, moments of mourning, moments of prayer, even tea ceremonies, designed to slow the body so the soul can catch up. And yet, in many modern lives, silence is uncomfortable. We fill it with distractions, scrolls, tasks, chatter. But what if that very discomfort is the doorway? What if silence isn't empty, but full of things waiting to be heard? Time doesn't always shout its arrival. The future doesn't always crash through the window with urgency. More often, it slips in softly while you're quiet enough to notice its footsteps, a decision you didn't realize you made, a realization that wasn't forced, a path that revealed itself only when you stopped searching. Sometimes the pause is not a break in the story, it is the story, the waiting, the wondering, the listening. It's the part that holds potential in its purest form, not yet shaped, but already real, like the moment before a seed breaks open underground, silent, still, but full of life. So tonight, let the world be quiet for just a little while. Let the screens dim. Let the clock soften its ticking. Let your mind uncurl from the day's grip and settle into that sacred hush. Pause with intention, not because you're falling behind, but because this is the only way to truly arrive. The next moment is patient. It will wait for you. And when you're ready, it will begin. The timeline that envied yours. There is a version of you, somewhere quiet, somewhere folded into the layers of the unseen, who looks across the veils of time not to judge, but to wonder. Wonder what it feels like to carry your heart, to move through your days with your rhythm, to speak the exact words you did not say. They're not a ghost, not a twin, not a stranger, just a nearby heartbeat with your name. One evening, while standing beneath the humming glow of a street lamp, someone said, "Do you ever feel like you missed something? Not because you were wrong, but because another version of you reached it first?" The other person laughed softly, a little surprised. "You mean like the you who took the other job or stayed in that relationship?" "Not exactly. More like the you that didn't blink when the world asked if you were ready." A silence followed, not heavy, but thoughtful, as if both of them were listening for the echo of footsteps that belonged to someone they never became. If the multiverse holds, as quantum whispers suggest, then your unlived choices didn't die. They were born elsewhere. Elsewhere, there's a version of you who fell in love with someone you never met. Elsewhere, you failed bravely in ways you were too afraid to try. Elsewhere, the pain you carry now never arrived. And elsewhere still, a life that envied yours, wondering what it feels like to be this you. This one who stayed, who said yes or said no, or didn't say anything at all, but breathed through it anyway. And maybe, just maybe, that version of you is sending back soft signals. Longing that doesn't quite make sense. Nostalgia for places you've never seen. The urge to weep in the middle of joy. What if those aren't mistakes in your emotional code? What if those are brush strokes from a life adjacent to yours, not haunting you, just reaching? Some people say time moves forward, others say it loops. But tonight, it feels like time is a hallway, and through its thin walls, you can sometimes hear laughter that sounds eerily like your own. A voice in a dream might say, "You made it." Not all of us do, and you won't need to ask who they are. You'll just feel known. Tonight, sleep without needing all the answers. You are not a single story, but a mosaic of timelines, each one quietly rooting for your peace. And if you feel a warm breath brushing your shoulder as you drift off, don't be afraid. It might just be another you, pausing to make sure you got the better ending. The clock that forgot to count. There are moments, soft and silent, where time seems to lose its grip on everything, not because it broke, but because it was no longer needed. Like a clock placed gently face down in the dark, forgotten, but not lost. In these spaces between thoughts, between heartbeats, between the inhale and exhale, you begin to feel something rare, a freedom not from noise, but from measure. "Is it morning yet?" she asked, half awake, voice muffled in the pillow. He smiled, staring at the ceiling. "I'm not sure. I stopped checking." They lay there, wrapped in a hush that didn't ask for anything. No alarms, no deadlines, only the soft breath of being. Time doesn't always tick. Sometimes it lingers like mist over water. Other times, it fades entirely, slipping between the folds of your consciousness like a sigh too light to notice. This is especially true when you surrender to sleep, that moment before you drift, where the past loosens its grip and the future politely waits its turn. You don't feel hours moving then. You only feel spacious. When you're deeply rested, 1 minute can hold the weight of a whole morning, or it can evaporate, leaving no trace but the feeling of being held in something larger than schedule. In that space, clocks are irrelevant. They're observers without authority. You become the artist, your mind the sky, your dreams the brushstrokes. It's strange how the world insists on measurement, on defining every second as gain or loss. But have you ever noticed how time bends when you stop trying to manage it? Do you remember how long we lay under that tree? He asked once. She laughed. An afternoon, or a lifetime, it felt like both. That's the kind of time the clock forgets to count, the kind that wraps you in presence so fully that counting becomes absurd. Time, in its strictest form, is a tool, but in its truest form, it's a field. Open, waiting, and when you rest, really rest, you stop being a prisoner of the ticking. You become part of the landscape. Tonight, let the clock fade. Let its hands rest. You don't need to chase anything now. You're outside of time, gently rocking on the tide of breath and thought. Every second that passes doesn't lead you anywhere. It only carries you deeper into a space that asks nothing of you. This is not escape, it's return. To a rhythm older than calendars, to a moment that stretches not because it's long, but because it's whole. And as your eyelids grow heavy and the boundary between thought and dream begins to blur, you'll notice something subtle. The counting has stopped, and still, you are safe. Still, you are seen. Still, you are here. Not in a timeline, but in a truth that needs no ticking. The meaning that was never yours to carry. Some things slip onto our shoulders so quietly, we never ask who placed them there, like the weight of someone else's dream, or a story whispered in childhood that hardened into truth. Not yours, but worn for so long, it started to feel like skin. You were told to be strong, to be quiet, to make peace, to succeed, but no one asked if those meanings ever fit you. They just stitched them into your identity, thread by thread, until you mistook obedience for purpose. Two friends sit under a streetlight after a long day. One stares into the dark sky, the other into a half-empty coffee cup. "Do you ever wonder," the first says, "if you're chasing something that never wanted to be caught?" The second replies, "I think I've been carrying a story my parents needed me to live, not the one I needed to write." The silence that follows feels like a confession finally exhaled. We adopt roles handed down like heirlooms, the good child, the provider, the peacekeeper. Even our sadness sometimes doesn't belong to us. It echoes from the unhealed wounds of those who raised us. We confuse obligation with love, meaning with burden. But what if emptiness wasn't hollow? What if it was space, soft, open, fertile, ready to be filled with something that finally feels like yours? A stranger once stopped you, smiled with no agenda, and said, "You look like someone on the edge of letting go." You laughed politely, but deep down, something in you stirred. Not quite fear, not quite hope. Something in between. Like your body knew a version of you was waiting on the other side of release. Letting go isn't the end of meaning. It's the beginning of choosing it. Tonight, notice the parts of you that feel heavy, but vague. Responsibilities you never agreed to. Stories that echo with someone else's voice. Patterns inherited like muscle memory from generations past. You don't have to solve them, just acknowledge them. They were never yours to begin with. A quiet rebellion starts with one breath, then another, not to fix, but to free, to rest, not from effort, but from meanings that exhausted you before you even spoke them aloud. Maybe, in that breath, you begin to trust that freedom doesn't scream. It whispers, it pauses, it releases, it rests. And as your chest rises and falls, without needing a reason, you realize something gentle, yet radical. You are allowed to be without proving. You are allowed to sleep without earning it. You are allowed to drop the meaning and keep the breath. So drop it now, whatever it was. Let the weight dissolve into the mattress beneath you. Let the silence cradle you, like a lullaby that speaks your true name. Sleep isn't a surrender. It's a soft return to the version of you that never needed permission to simply be. The stranger. You already are. Have you ever paused mid-thought, suddenly unsure of who exactly is thinking it? Not in a dramatic identity-losing way, but in a soft confusion, like turning a familiar book and realizing some pages were written in a different hand. That's the quiet truth we often ignore. You are not entirely familiar with yourself. Beneath the routine replies, beneath the practiced smile, there is a voice you haven't fully heard. And not because it's silent, only because it whispers in frequencies you're not trained to listen to yet. Your emotions, some of them unnamed, flicker like stars behind thin clouds. You've felt them in dreams you couldn't explain. You've glimpsed them in moments that felt too big to understand, like hearing music that feels personal, even though you've never heard it before. Do you ever feel like you're watching yourself from a distance? Sometimes. Like, I'm moving through the day, but something deeper is still asleep inside me. Exactly. Like there's a version of you waiting to be discovered, not created. This quiet truth is not a flaw. It's a feature. You were never meant to arrive at a final, solid version of who you are. There is no single you waiting at the end of some character arc. Instead, you are a becoming, not a being. A garden still learning what it can grow. And within that mystery, there's grace. You are allowed to not have all the answers. You are allowed to surprise yourself. The shadows you haven't explored are not threats. They are invitations. Behind the locked doors of your own memory, your own longing, lives a part of you that isn't hiding in fear. It's waiting with patience. Have you ever cried without knowing exactly why? Yes, like the tears belong to someone I used to be, or someone I haven't met yet. Maybe both. Maybe parts of us remember things we haven't lived, or hope for things we can't name. You're not broken for not knowing who you are. You're not behind. You're simply unfolding, like a photograph developing in the darkroom of your days. And no one can rush that process. Even you. Especially you. So tonight, as the world quiets and your breathing softens, maybe meet yourself with a little more patience. Let the unfamiliar be gentle. You don't need to name everything. You don't need to fix what hasn't finished blooming. There's no deadline on becoming. There's only the slow miracle of noticing, of learning, of resting with the mystery that you are, and always have been. Close your eyes now. Let the stranger inside you feel a little more seen. Let the questions remain open. You're not late. You're just arriving. The voice that wasn't yours. Somewhere between brushing your teeth and turning off the light, a thought crosses your mind. Not a loud one, just a whisper. You didn't do enough today. And for a second, you nod, as if that thought belonged to you. as if you invited it in. But what if it didn't? You weren't born with that voice. You didn't create it. It arrived, quietly, slipped in like background music in a store you didn't choose to walk into. It might have been your mother's worry, your father's silence, a teacher's frown, a screen full of faces that never blink. It could have been 1,000 moments stitched into a sentence that plays on loop. You should be better by now. A barista wipes down the counter and glances toward a customer who's just spilled their drink. The man apologizes, flustered, cheeks hot with shame. "You're good," the barista says without thinking, then adds, "Happens to everyone." And for the first time in years, that man feels like he's not failing, not broken, just human. Sometimes, kindness from a stranger rings more true than the voice you've known forever. We're full of echoes, secondhand beliefs, inherited fears. Some don't even sound like us, but we carry them like family heirlooms, tarnished, unloved, yet hard to let go. And that's the strange part, isn't it? We defend the voice that hurts us because we confuse it with ourselves. Freedom doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in a breath, a pause, a quiet defiance that says, "That voice isn't mine." Someone once asked, "Why do I always feel guilty when I rest?" And the reply came gently, "Because someone taught you rest was laziness, and you believed them before you ever knew what rest really was." There's no villain in this story, just echoes, passed down like bedtime stories that never fit your soul. So tonight, as the world softens around you, give yourself permission to notice, not to fix, not to argue, just to notice which voices speak in tones that don't belong to your heart. If you listen closely, you'll hear the difference. The voice that pushes and pokes, it's not your own. Your true voice, your actual voice, doesn't demand, it invites, it doesn't wound, it waits, it doesn't shout, it hums in the quiet after everything else has gone still. And in that stillness, there's space for you to arrive. So drift a little further now. Let the voices fade like storefront lights at closing time. One by one, they dim, until there's only you. Not the version sculpted by expectation, but the version resting beneath all that noise. The one who doesn't have to prove anything tonight. Let sleep catch you in that quiet. The voice that wasn't yours has said enough. Let silence speak now. You're already home. The memory that was never lived. There are moments when you feel the weight of something ancient, something tender, yet untraceable. You close your eyes, and an image flashes, not a dream, not quite a thought, but a scene that has no rightful place in your memory. A hand you've never held, a road your feet never walked, a house with a blue door that you swear you've entered before, but you haven't, not in this life. Do you ever get the feeling you've been here before, even when you know you haven't? Exactly, like the trees remember you, even if you don't remember them. This sensation doesn't come with facts or dates. It arrives like mist, soft, surrounding, and impossible to pin down. There's a sadness in it, a beauty too. You might encounter it in music you've never heard before, yet know exactly how the next note will sound, or in the way someone's smile stirs a joy so raw, it feels like reunion. But of what? Of who? Psychologists might call it cryptomnesia. Mystics might call it reincarnation. But perhaps the truth is softer than that, less about theories and more about resonance, like the way a violin string vibrates when another across the room is played. Some part of you, invisible and tuned to a frequency beyond logic, simply remembers. And what if these feelings aren't leftovers from your own mind, but from another's, carried in your breath, in your blood, in your nervous system, which may hum with stories your ancestors never got to tell. A grief passed down, not spoken, but stored. A longing inherited like eye color. These are not memories in the way we usually define them. They are echoes, humming beneath thought, not remembered, but felt. One evening, you sit in a quiet cafe. Across from you, a stranger looks up, and for a heartbeat, your chest tightens. Not with fear, but recognition. The kind that doesn't make sense but insists. You've never met them, yet your body reacts as if you've known them through lifetimes. And you don't speak. You don't need to, because something within you already has. There's no need to chase down logic in these moments. Let them arrive like visitors from a dream you forgot you dreamed. They don't demand to be solved, only felt. There's a tenderness in letting them exist, unnamed. Like holding a feather of a bird you'll never see, yet believing it flew through you. So tonight, don't search for answers in your history. Let your history find you, not the one written in journals or told in stories, but the one stitched between your heartbeat and breath, the one that speaks in emotion, not memory, that leans in not with noise, but with silence. And if something rises within you, an ache, a joy, a familiarity with no source, don't push it away. Rest beside it. Let it unfold gently, quietly, like a forgotten melody returning to the wind. The belief that died in stillness. There are moments, rare, unannounced, when the world slows without asking. Not because you're tired, not because you're trying, but because something inside you just stops humming. And in that hush, you hear it. A truth you didn't know you were avoiding. A fan continues to spin in the background. The light shifts gently across the ceiling. But inside you, something unfamiliar stirs. A question without form, a softness without cause. That's when it happens. The belief, the one you didn't know you built your voice around, begins to loosen. Not because you argued with it, not because anyone challenged it, but because silence doesn't lie, and silence doesn't need to shout. Two people sit beside each other at a late-night train station. One speaks gently, not looking up from their hands. Do you ever feel like you stopped believing something without noticing? The other replies, after a beat, yeah, like a childhood smell that just disappears one day. Stillness is not nothingness. It is a patient teacher, and when it arrives, it strips off the layers we stitched in noise, the ones we wore out of habit, not truth. You thought you needed that belief. You thought it kept you afloat. But here you are, floating just fine in its absence. It turns out some beliefs only survive in motion. They hide behind busy days, loud thoughts, the clamor of proving. But when you stop moving, when you no longer try to protect or explain or rehearse them, they dissolve. Not with a bang, with a breath, a sigh you didn't know you'd been holding. In a quiet kitchen, someone stares into their tea. Across from them, a friend asks, "You okay?" They answer, "I think I just let go of something I didn't know I was gripping." That's the thing about stillness. It's not passive. It's sharp, like moonlight through a crack. It finds what's false and lets it bleed out quietly. It doesn't accuse you. It simply holds up a mirror and waits. And when the belief finally dies, there's no funeral, just space. Space to rest, space to begin again, not from defense, but from awareness. This is not about about fixing yourself. It's about listening to what doesn't survive the silence, and accepting that its exit might be the kindest form of growth. So stay quiet. No need to fill the room. Let the stillness reveal what never needed to be carried in the first place. Let the false fall away, gently, silently, without needing a name. And if you start to drift off, that's okay. Sleep is also a kind of stillness, one that welcomes you when the noise finally lets go. The end that came without drama. It ended, but not with a bang, not with fanfare, not with fireworks or heartbreak or any of the grand gestures we've been trained to expect. It simply exhaled. There are endings like that, ones that do not announce themselves. They do not demand your attention or insist upon a lesson. They arrive slowly, like dusk settling on the horizon, inevitable, natural, quiet. You almost don't notice until it's already dark and you realize, oh, it's over. We grow up watching stories that reach their peak in a blaze of glory. The final kiss, the final showdown, the triumphant return. But not all stories rise to meet thunder. Some, the realest ones, slip away unnoticed, like the way your childhood ends without a ceremony, or how the last time you speak to someone doesn't feel like the last at all. There are no trumpets, only silence. And maybe that's not a tragedy. Maybe it's a kind of grace. Do you remember the last time we talked about our future? She asked softly, watching the tea leaves swirl. He shook his head. I thought there'd be one more conversation. Something meaningful. Closure. Maybe this is it, she whispered. Maybe the meaning is that we didn't need to say it. There's a candle in every life that doesn't go out in wind or rain. It simply burns to its end and goes still. No drama, no smoke, just stillness. You might have imagined your own finale differently. Perhaps you pictured applause, a revelation, something more cinematic. But peace, real peace, rarely shouts. It hums. You don't have to prove anything to the moment you're leaving behind. It doesn't require your grief to make it valid. It doesn't need to be painful to be important. In fact, the most sacred transitions are the ones that happen without needing to be seen. There's a kind of goodbye that doesn't ache. It doesn't echo. It just breathes out, like a long sigh after a full day. That's what this is. An ending that doesn't perform. An ending that is just allowed. He turned off the lights, one room at a time. She didn't look back at the house. There was nothing left to dramatize, nothing to resolve. Only a quiet understanding. It's done. Tonight. Let your day close like that. Gently. Without the urge to tie it with a bow or explain what it meant. Let the end be sacred, not because it's spectacular, but because it simply is. And as you drift into sleep, don't ask for a conclusion. Just rest inside the knowing that it's okay to stop here. There's no curtain call, no final note, only quiet, only rest, only you, floating at the edge of the day. And that is enough. The thought you didn't finish. It begins in the quiet between breaths. A single drifting thought. You didn't call it forward. It just appeared, soft as dust in a sunbeam. Not urgent, not sharp, just there, hovering, like the way a song sometimes plays in your mind without a beginning or end. You think, what if I had stayed? Could I have tried harder? Should I text them back? But before the sentence completes, sleep begins to lean on your shoulders. The thought doesn't vanish. It simply loses its edges. You didn't forget it. You just didn't finish it. And maybe that's okay. Two strangers sit on a late-night train. One looks out the window and says, "Do you ever feel like some questions aren't meant to be solved?" The other nods slowly. I think some are just meant to keep us human. The world teaches us to wrap everything up, tight conclusions, neat bows, but the mind doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it hums instead of speaks. Sometimes a question is a home, not a puzzle. A place you return to when you don't need answers, only company. You once started to wonder why you miss someone you never met, or why a certain color reminds you of childhood. You never finished those thoughts, but they live in you like lullabies passed down without lyrics. Maybe finishing them would break the spell. There's a kind of intimacy in the unfinished, a secret only the soul keeps, left unspoken so it can breathe. The same way mist hangs in a valley long after sunrise, refusing to hurry. The same way your body remembers to rest, even when your mind still spins. A friend once paused mid-sentence and smiled. I lost the point, they said, but maybe it didn't need one. That's the kind of wisdom that slips in when you're not chasing it. A gentle invitation from life itself. Not everything needs to be resolved. Some truths are felt, not fixed. Some thoughts are music, not math. So tonight, don't chase the ending. Let that question linger like steam on glass. Let it hover. Let it hum. Let it hold you in the space between curiosity and calm. And if you drift off before you finish this sentence, that's the perfect way for it to end, or not end at all. The repetition that frees you. What if doing the same thing isn't failure, but devotion? It's a strange thought, isn't it? In a world addicted to novelty, we've been conditioned to fear repetition, as if doing something twice means we're not progressing, not growing, not enough. But maybe that's a misunderstanding of time. Maybe the loops we move through aren't cages, but rhythms. Maybe the very act of returning to the same morning coffee, to the same quiet walk, to the same soft goodbye isn't stagnation. It's worship in disguise. There's a holiness to the heartbeat, to the inhale that knows it will exhale again, to blinking eyes that never apologize for needing to close, then open again. None of these biological repetitions are seen as weakness. They're seen as life itself. So why do we treat our emotional repetitions, our need to rest, our return to old memories, our rediscovery of the same lessons, as regression? What if they're sacred too? Imagine someone sitting by the window every night, looking out at the same streetlight. To the outside world, it might look pointless, repetitive, but maybe it's their ritual, a private pilgrimage into calm. Just because it looks the same doesn't mean it feels the same. Each return carries new meaning, shaped by who they are that day. Repetition isn't sameness. It's variation, wrapped in the comfort of the familiar. Do you ever get tired of watching the same stars? She asked. Not really, he replied, because I'm not the same person watching them. That's the quiet miracle of loops. You walk the same path, but the feet that carry you have changed. The soul, noticing the view, has shifted. The you that returns is never quite the you who left. Devotion doesn't scream. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just shows up, again, and again, and again. Whether that's in prayer, in art, in love, or in the simple act of brushing your hair before bed. These daily echoes are the music of faithfulness. They remind us that not every step forward looks like movement. Sometimes, the deepest kind of forward is stillness repeated. So maybe you're not stuck. Maybe you're staying. Maybe you're choosing to honor your rituals, not because they're exciting, but because they're grounding. In a universe spinning faster than our minds can process, your repetition is resistance, a soft rebellion against the cult of urgency. You are saying, This moment matters enough to repeat, and if time is a spiral, not a straight line, then every cycle is a chance to deepen, not just to begin again, but to begin better, to feel more, to need less, to be enough. So return to your breath, return to your gentle routines, return to your place in the universe where nothing explodes, but everything hums with quiet purpose. You're not wasting time by repeating. You're weaving time into meaning, and in that rhythm, you are already free. The whole that was never lost. There's a quiet truth that most of us forget before sleep. You were never broken. Not really. You only believed you were incomplete because the world whispered it often enough. Like wind slipping under a door, that whisper made itself at home. One evening, two strangers sit side by side on a train. One watches the blur of the trees, the other clutches a bag of groceries, and somewhere in between the silence, the first one turns and softly says, "Do you ever feel like something's missing?" The second doesn't flinch, just smiles, small and knowing. Only when I believe the story that I'm supposed to be more than I already am. Time tricks us like that. It stacks the years like building blocks, asking us to climb higher. We look back at childhood, forward toward goals, and always ask, what did I forget? What did I fail to become? But maybe there was never a piece missing. Maybe the map was just folded in a way that hid the treasure in plain sight. You don't need to collect every memory like fallen leaves. You don't have to repair every scar as if healing means hiding the wound. What if every version of you, every awkward smile, every late-night doubt, every skipped heartbeat of hope, was already part of a quiet design too wide for your mirror to hold? When you stop sprinting after the future or rewriting the past, something unexpected happens. Stillness arrives, and in that stillness, time doesn't pull you apart, it holds you together. A woman in a coffee shop once asked the barista, "Could you add just a little more milk? It's not wrong, it just doesn't feel full." And without realizing it, she gave voice to the ache many carry, the sense that something could be just a touch more complete. But maybe fullness doesn't come from adding. Maybe it comes from noticing what was already there. What if your longing was never a sign of lack, but a sign of presence, of being so beautifully alive that your heart refuses to stop listening for something deeper, even if it's already in your hands? Outside of linear time, the pieces don't compete. They coalesce. Regret softens. Plans relax their grip. The self you were at 17 doesn't vanish. It becomes a note in the symphony, still humming beneath every decision. And now your breath is part of that music too. Slow, steady, trusting. You are not a puzzle waiting to be solved. You are the picture, already whole, simply folded in places you haven't smoothed yet. So tonight, let go of the hunt for completion. There is no secret chapter, no perfect upgrade, no final version waiting in tomorrow's download. There is only now, and you, here, whole, even if it doesn't always feel that way. Exhale, not because you're giving up, but because you've finally come home, and there is nothing left to search for. The pain that asked for nothing. There are some aches that don't scream. They don't demand remedies or cry out for rescue. They just sit quietly in the corner of your chest, soft and persistent, like an old memory with no name. And on this night, under the slow breathing of the sky, it rises, not to disrupt, but to be noticed. What if pain, in its most honest form, never wanted to be fixed? What if it only ever wanted a witness? You lie in bed, eyes half closed, and something tight curls beneath your ribs, a subtle pressure, not dramatic, not unbearable, just there. And instead of trying to untangle it, to decode it or cast it away, you breathe around it. You allow it to exist without resistance, like letting a stranger sit beside you on a bench without asking who they are or why they've come. There's a quiet dignity in this stillness, in the choice not to push away what hurts, but to honor it by simply letting it be. Tonight, you don't make this pain your project. You don't light incense or recite mantras or flip through old journals trying to find the origin. You offer no rituals of repair. You give it something rarer, your presence. Are you okay? One voice inside you asks, cautious and kind. I'm here, answers another, softer still. I don't need to be okay right now. I just need to be. That small dialogue between one part of you that still wants to help and the other that's learned how to stay is a sacred meeting. It isn't a solution, but it's a form of peace. Sometimes, what we call healing is really just listening with our full attention. No tools, no timeline, just stillness and breath. And maybe the pain doesn't disappear, but it shifts. It stretches its legs. It exhales, no longer needing to clench itself into something sharp just to be acknowledged. It leans into you, not to burden, but to rest. And that, perhaps, is its version of relief. You realize then that you've always had this capacity to hold space without needing to fix, not just for others, but for yourself, for the parts of you that ache in quiet ways, for the disappointments that never made noise, for the wounds that were never dramatic enough to earn attention. They live in the background, but tonight, they are allowed to exist in the foreground, gently and without fear. You whisper to the silence, it's okay to stay. And in that whisper, something heavy loosens, not because it's over, but because it's allowed. Let your pain sit beside you. Let it sigh. Let it close its tired eyes and lean on your shoulder. You don't have to chase it away. It doesn't want rescue. Just rest. Tonight, neither of you have to fix anything. Just breathe. Just be. Let the quiet do the holding. The stars that forgot their names. You're lying beneath a ceiling, but your mind is already drifting toward a darker sky, one without constellations, one without maps, just scattered light, shimmering like distant thoughts that never needed introductions. There's a star out there, burning quietly, without a title, without applause. No astronomer ever claimed it. No myth named it after a god. And still, it glows, unapologetically, brilliantly, simply because that's what it was born to do. A voice whispers from somewhere beside you, low and casual, like someone leaning in on a park bench at dusk. Do you ever feel like people only see you when you say the right thing, when you fit the right role? And the answer, soft and tired, follows like the settling of dusk on warm pavement. Sometimes, but maybe we're still shining, even when no one's looking. Silence returns like a lullaby. A moment rests. You begin to realize something. Not every light needs a label. Some stars are old enough to forget what they were called. They don't blink in Morse code or beg for meaning. They simply exist, holding galaxies together without being named in anyone's telescope log. Maybe you are one of those stars. In a world obsessed with defining, describing, explaining, maybe your value isn't in being understood. Maybe your presence is already enough. Maybe your joy doesn't need translation. Maybe your pain doesn't need permission. At a quiet diner, two strangers sit across from each other. One stirs their coffee in lazy spirals. I don't know who I am anymore, they confess. Not dramatically. Just honestly. The other replies without looking up. Maybe that's not a problem. Maybe that's just freedom. You let those words settle, not because they fix anything, but because they don't try to. You feel a gentle loosening, like threads untying behind your ribs. The pressure to define yourself, hero, failure, artist, nobody, slips through your fingers like sand. Maybe you don't need to explain your glow to anyone. Maybe it's enough that you still shine, even when the world forgets how to pronounce your name, and in that forgetting, you're finally free. Tonight, you don't search for a label. You don't rehearse your purpose. You simply breathe. Exist. Light leaking from the edges of your soul. Unnamed, but infinite. Let that be enough. And if your eyes close before the next star blinks, don't worry. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Still glowing. Still here. The breath that forgot. It was breathing. You don't remember your last breath, not because it wasn't important, but because it didn't need to ask for attention. That's the quiet miracle of being alive. Breathing is the rhythm that keeps you here, even when your mind has wandered far, even when your thoughts have curled into sleep. And tonight, you may find yourself forgetting again, but this time, it's not forgetfulness. It's surrender. Have you ever noticed how peace doesn't announce itself? It tiptoes in, a warm silence, a falling away. That's what happens when your breath becomes so steady, so trusted, that you no longer need to check on it, no longer need to supervise. It's like a parent letting go of the bicycle seat, realizing the child is pedaling all on their own. The moment you stop thinking about it, that's the moment you are truly held. Inhale, she whispered. I didn't even realize I was, he murmured, eyes closed. Exactly, she smiled. That's the point. The breath knows. It has always known. From the moment you were born into air, your lungs began this lifelong whisper, this steady tide between presence and pause. It doesn't beg for applause. It doesn't shout for praise. It simply continues, even when your heart is tired, even when your thoughts feel too heavy to carry, even when your mind begs for answers and the body answers only with softness. This is the breath that forgot it was breathing, not from danger, but from trust. Trust that the body has its own memory of calm. Trust that beneath the noise of the day, beneath the decisions, the doubts, the endless doing, there is still something that remembers how to rest, something that remembers how to let go. You are not asked to control the night. You are not asked to solve tomorrow or to replay today. You are simply invited to exhale, to fall into rhythm, to allow yourself to be carried. And this too is a kind of time travel, not a leap into the future, but a return to something ancient, a return to the gentle intelligence of your own biology, a return to the peace that existed before the mind filled itself with worry. What if I forget to breathe? He once asked. You won't, she replied. That's the beauty of it. Your breath remembers, even when you don't. So now, let it remember for you. Let the tide rise and fall without your permission. Let the body do what it was made to do. Sleep is not earned by effort. Healing is not forced by will. Sometimes, the deepest kind of strength is simply letting the softness in, letting go of the wheel, letting the breath guide the way. And as your chest rises, then falls, without you noticing, that's when you know you've entered the sanctuary, not a temple made of stone, but of silence. A silence filled with breath, a stillness that knows your name, a rhythm that never needed to be loud to be real. Let the breath carry you now. You don't need to hold on anymore. you're already home. The reflection that didn't need clarity. There's a softness to not knowing, a kindness in not needing to. When the surface of your thoughts becomes fogged over like glass after a shower, you might instinctively want to wipe it clean. But wait, look again. Maybe it's not the shape that matters, but the shimmer behind it. Somewhere in a quiet room, two friends sit beside a small window, watching raindrops streak down the outside pane. One says, "It's strange. I can't see the garden clearly tonight." The other smiles. "That's okay. I know it's still there." The truth doesn't vanish just because it's out of focus. In fact, there's a strange kind of intimacy in what we sense rather than what we see. You've felt it before. The presence of a memory without recalling the exact day. A warmth in someone's voice without needing words. A comfort that doesn't arrive with explanation, but simply arrives. Your thoughts don't always need to form perfect sentences. Your feelings don't always need to make sense. Sometimes your mind is a lake on a windy day. Ripples where you wanted stillness. But underneath, the water still knows how to hold the sky. It's tempting to want sharp answers, especially in moments of emotional exhaustion. We reach for clarity like a flashlight. But there are nights, like this one, when the darkness doesn't mean danger. It means depth. The kind of depth where the edges blur, but the meaning grows stronger. You've seen yourself in imperfect mirrors, not just the ones in bathrooms, but in other people's eyes, in offhand comments, in fleeting reflections caught in train windows, and yet you've always recognized something, your posture, your laugh, the familiar curve of thought that tells you, "I am still here." A quiet hallway, the hum of a vending machine, someone walking by muttering, "I thought I left my keys." Wait. Never mind. That too is a moment. That too is real life catching its breath. You don't have to decode every part of your day. You don't have to analyze every emotional knot or tidy up your inner world before you're allowed to rest. Even the sky sleeps while holding its clouds. So if your thoughts feel foggy now, if your mind keeps skipping like a record, you are not broken. You are just in a different rhythm. And rhythm doesn't need clarity. It needs trust. Trust that you are allowed to drift. Trust that you are still whole in the blur. Tonight, you can loosen the grip on understanding. You can let the mirror stay cracked and still know what's true. Not by sight, but by sense. Not by control, but by closeness. Let the fog roll in. Let it wrap you. You are safe even when you don't see the path ahead. Sleep doesn't ask you to make sense. It just asks you to stay long enough for it to find you. Let clarity dissolve now. There is wisdom, real, breathing wisdom, in what we don't force into focus. The wound that wasn't ashamed. You lie there, soft beneath the weight of your own breath, and somewhere beneath the surface, something still aches. It doesn't scream. It doesn't ask for rescue. It simply is. A quiet pulse beneath your ribs, a memory that never hardened into a scar. Maybe it's not weakness. Maybe it's not failure. Maybe it's just a part of you, still open. Do you think it's okay to still hurt from things that happened years ago? The voice drifts into the night, tentative, like someone gently testing the edge of their own vulnerability. Of course it is. The reply comes, not with certainty, but with warmth. That just means it mattered, that it touched something real in you. We're taught to hide the hurt, to bandage quickly, to smile before we're ready. But pain, real pain, has its own pace. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't follow your calendar. It lingers where it's needed. Because not all pain is damage. Sometimes pain is proof that the door to your soul is still open, that you're still willing to feel, even when it's uncomfortable, that you're not numb, that you haven't given up. There is beauty in that kind of openness, in the heart that doesn't flinch from feeling. You see, shame has a clever voice. It tells you that wounds are embarrassing, that tears should be private, that your softness is a burden. But those are lies dressed up as strength. Because true strength, it's not the closing. It's the staying open, the standing still when it would be easier to run, the quiet whisper, yes, this still hurts, and I'm still here. You are not broken. You are breathing. You are not ruined. You are raw. And tonight, rawness is allowed. Let your wounds breathe in this soft silence. You don't need to explain them. You don't need to fix them. You certainly don't need to apologize for them. They are not defects. They are the places where life touched you the hardest, and you survived. Maybe not unchanged, but unashamed. And that's something worth honoring. Do you think people would still love me if they saw the parts I hide? The second voice carries the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. Maybe the ones who matter. Comes the answer, gentle as the dark. Maybe they'd love you more because of those parts, not in spite of them. Tonight isn't for pretending. It's not for masks or armor. It's for loosening the bandages and letting air reach what's been hidden. Let the sting remind you that you are alive. Let the ache remind you that you have capacity, that even in pain, you are still full of presence, still full of care. You don't have to make it poetic. You don't have to make it mean something profound. You only have to let it be. Pain that's allowed to breathe often softens, not because it disappears, but because it finally feels safe enough not to harden. So rest now. Let the wound lie beside you, unashamed. Let it be one more part of you that's learning how to trust the quiet, how to soften into sleep, how to be open without fear. You are not alone. You are not too much. You are not behind. You are exactly what you need to be. Tender, present, and healing. And that is enough for tonight. The quiet that was a miracle. You didn't hear it, but something began shifting the moment you stopped trying to fix the noise. There was no chime, no grand gesture, no spark that lit the sky. Just a pause. A quiet so delicate you almost stepped over it. But there, in that hush, a miracle curled itself around your chest, soft as a breath you forgot to take. Silence isn't nothing. Silence is the seedbed where everything begins. In the loud machinery of the day, you learn to measure aliveness by sound, laughter, alarms, conversation, even chaos. But real life, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. And when it does, it sounds like nothing at all. In the quiet, your body speaks its forgotten language. The slow thaw of tension in your shoulders. The subtle shift of your jaw unclenching. No one claps for these small releases, but they matter. More than most things that make noise. Hey, a voice beside you says gently, you look like you're trying to remember something you never said. You pause. I think I'm just feeling too much. He nods. Or maybe you're finally feeling just enough. That moment, brief as it was, stays with you. Because sometimes healing doesn't come dressed as a revelation. It arrives as stillness. A sacred sort of stillness that doesn't ask for applause. It just stays with you long enough to remind you. You're still here. You're still becoming. We're trained to chase breakthroughs with trumpets, job offers, confessions, proposals, plans. But maybe the most profound realizations aren't loud. Maybe they unfold in the background, while you stir your tea, while your cat blinks slowly across the room, while you sit alone, not lonely, simply aware. A woman once said, "I used to think quiet meant emptiness, but then I stopped filling it, and it became full." And her friend replied, "It's strange, isn't it? How quietness isn't really silence. It's the sound of everything meaningful taking a breath. There's a rhythm to life that can't be heard when we fill every space. True transformation doesn't always ask you to do more. Sometimes it begs you to stop, to unclench the heart, to allow room for stillness to show you its gifts. You might think nothing's happening, but what if that nothing is the miracle? Even now, your thoughts are slowing. Words stretch out like shadows in late afternoon. The part of you that always needs to move is beginning to loosen its grip. You're not frozen. You're floating. This stillness, it's not empty. It's generous. You're not broken for needing quiet. You're wise for seeking it. And perhaps tonight, in this soft spiral downward, you'll feel something sacred blooming where there was only noise before. Not loudly, not with spectacle, but with grace. So let it happen. Let the silence hold you, not like a secret, but like a sunrise no one else needs to see. Let it remind you that peace doesn't need to be announced. It only needs to be received. Close your eyes now. The miracle isn't waiting for you to catch up. It's already here, quiet and alive. The voice that asked for nothing. There is a voice inside you that never raised its hand. It never shouted across the room, never tried to dominate the moment, never demanded to be acknowledged. And yet, it is there, quietly, unshaken, watching everything. It doesn't need volume to have presence. It doesn't need applause to feel worthy. It simply exists, like a still pond that reflects the sky without ever trying to impress it. You don't have to speak to be heard, not by the world, and certainly not by yourself. That inner voice, barely more than a whisper, isn't trying to persuade anyone. It doesn't perform. It doesn't seek followers. It isn't polished for presentation or tailored for approval. It just is. And maybe that's what makes it sacred. In the softness of night, when distractions fall away and even thoughts start to dissolve, this voice rises, not louder, but clearer. It's the part of you that doesn't panic in silence. It doesn't fidget when no one's watching. It doesn't crave likes or retweets or validation. It just waits, listens, exists. I don't know why, but sometimes I feel this strange peace when I'm just sitting in the dark, she says quietly. He nods, barely turning. That's probably when you're finally hearing yourself. Not your thoughts, just you. She lets out a breath. No arguments, no stories, just quiet. That's the real voice, he says, eyes soft. The one that doesn't need to explain. We spend so much of our lives learning how to talk, how to defend ourselves, how to convince others, how to express our worth in words. But what if the most trustworthy parts of us don't speak that way at all? What if the truth of who we are is found not in what we say, but in the quiet between words? What if there is a self so rooted, so whole, that it doesn't need a podium or an audience? It just is. That voice does not shrink in silence. In fact, silence is where it grows. It does not tremble in loneliness. It knows how to befriend stillness. It does not seek constant updates, affirmations, or mirrors. It knows what it is. It carries your essence like a secret that doesn't need to be revealed to matter. This voice does not pray in sentences. It doesn't plead or list demands. It doesn't even move the lips. And still, somehow, It prays, not upward or outward, but inward, through presence, through being, through simply staying. There's something profoundly comforting about that kind of voice. It's the part of you that holds space for all your other selves, the excited, the broken, the healing, the doubting. It makes room without judgment. It hears without responding. It loves without needing to be seen. So tonight, don't perform. Don't strive to say the right thing or explain what you're feeling. Let that deeper voice come forward, not to speak, but simply to be. Sit beside it like an old friend who never needed small talk to feel close. Just breathe. Just exist. And as your body sinks further into rest, you may realize something beautiful. That this silent part of you, the one that asks for nothing, has always known how to be heard by the universe. It has always known how to pray, without ever saying a word. The stillness that wasn't empty. They say you're just lying there, that you're doing nothing. But that's the surface, barely a ripple on the lake of what's actually happening underneath. Stillness isn't a blank space. It's a deep chamber, a quiet chapel where something ancient begins to stir without ever needing to rise. Even now, beneath your skin, quiet repair teams are patching you together, without applause, without announcement. Mitochondria, like candle flames, synapses gently sweeping the day's dust away. You are not paused. You are being rewoven. Stillness is not the opposite of motion. It's its foundation, like the space between notes that gives music its shape, like the silence that makes the whisper matter. Sometimes what feels like nothing is everything holding you in place. You are not absent. You are whole and resting. Do you ever feel guilty for resting? Sometimes, like I should be doing something, achieving, solving. And yet look at the trees. They're not trying, but they grow just the same. This isn't laziness. This isn't delay. This is the sacred rhythm of being. A pause that stretches so long it starts to become the music itself. Think of a snow globe, chaos swirling until finally everything settles. Not lost, just home. There's no parade for this kind of moment, no medals for sitting in the dark and simply breathing. But this moment, it's where your nervous system exhales. It's where your heart finds rhythm again, where you return to yourself, not to improve, but just to belong. Stillness is a circle, not a stop sign. It contains every echo, every version of you, wrapped in soft velvet light. There are answers that only arrive in the hush between thoughts. And maybe tonight, you don't need to figure out your life. Maybe you just need to float for a while. A voice, not even loud enough to call a whisper, brushes across your thoughts. You're not failing by resting. You're honoring the invisible parts of you. And something in you softens in reply, wordless but understood. Stillness is a conversation without sound. It's where the world takes its hands off your shoulders. It's where time stops measuring and starts cradling. Even when nothing is moving, the universe is tilting its ear toward you, listening to your breath like a lullaby it's heard before. I thought I was falling behind, you murmur into the quiet. But the quiet doesn't scold. It holds you, and then replies, no. You were just being held. Let it hold you now. Let it be enough. Let stillness have the last word just for tonight. And if you drift, that's not forgetting. That's being remembered. The rebellion that ended in peace. At the end of the long corridor of thought, beyond every question you ever asked and every answer that never arrived, there lies something unexpected. Not a revelation, not a climax, but a softness. like stepping barefoot into quiet fog. The world still exists, sure, but you're no longer bracing against it. You're floating inside it. And that might be the most radical act of all. All this time, you thought rebellion meant noise, meant resistance, meant standing up and shouting, proving your place, claiming your truth. But tonight, the rebellion slipped out of its old armor and came dressed in stillness. The loudest thing you've done today might be the decision to rest, to stop fighting the invisible tides, to simply lie back and let the river take you, not because you've given up, but because you've finally chosen to trust it. I thought peace was something we had to fight for, someone says in the back of your mind, a voice that sounds like your own, but younger, more restless. And another voice answers, quiet, but clearer than thought. Maybe the fight ends when you stop needing to win. In this moment, you are not pushing forward. You are not untangling the mysteries of time or fixing what hurts. You're not trying to predict what comes next or what went wrong. You are allowing everything to simply be. No edits, no justifications, no explanations required. You have given the universe the rarest gift, your full, trusting presence. That's a rebellion, a quiet one, but powerful, because you began this night with a question burning in your chest, a kind of ache wrapped in thought. Why does the world spin so loud? You wanted to find meaning, to resist the blur of days that fold into each other like forgotten dreams. You wanted to step outside of the loop, to time travel with your soul, not your body. And now, as the final minutes settle like snow, you find yourself not beyond time, but beneath it, safe beneath its weight, cradled by the very silence you once feared. It wasn't about answers after all. You thought that sleep would come when things made sense, but sleep arrives when nothing has to, when the mind stops needing to organize the chaos into logic, when the breath doesn't ask for purpose, only rhythm. In that rhythm, you find a kind of sacred rebellion, the choice to stop grasping. There is something profoundly brave about letting go. A warm breath rises, then falls, not measured, not controlled, just present. The way leaves fall without shame, the way stars don't explain their glow. You are allowed to do nothing now. And in doing nothing, you are doing the one thing no one taught you how to do. Rest without guilt. The war between you and the world is over. There was never a winner. There was only the realization that peace isn't a treaty. It's a posture, a way of lying still and trusting that you are held, even by the air. You don't need to rehearse your pain tonight. You don't need to narrate your value to the darkness or prove your worth to the ticking clock. You don't have to say anything, not even to yourself, because the silence already understands. It holds you like a mother who's not waiting for words. It holds you like a future that doesn't need you to chase it. And so the rebellion ends, not in fire, but in peace. Let the thoughts slow. Let the body sink. Let the bed become the final soft landing of a long inward flight. You are not lost. You are not late. You are not broken. You are resting. You are trusting. You are asleep. You've drifted across the fractures of time, through loops, echoes, collapses, and beginnings that never ended. But maybe the real twist is that there's nothing to fix. No broken law, no paradox to patch, just a soft truth. Time doesn't need to make sense to hold you. Like a tide that forgets the shore, you've surrendered to the pull of now, not past, not future. Just this. So if time broke tonight, let it. Let it crumble like old paper. Let it fall like ash into your breath. Because what remains isn't sequence, it's presence. No endings, no destinations, just the sacred stillness between each heartbeat. You don't need to know where or when you are anymore. You're here, you're safe, and time has finally let you go. Sleep well, traveler.